keep you waiting for a minute or two. This is the October 7th, 2013 special meeting of the Town of Berthoud Planning and Zoning Commission. Sue, could you please call the roll?
Chris Thorne.
Here.
Scott Banza.
Yes.
Christine Celentano. Here. Carol Brewer.
Here.
Bill Gilmore.
Here.
Jan Dowker.
Here.
Dick Shepard.
Here.
Welcome, Bill and Christine, to your first meeting as Planning and Zoning Commissioners. Usually there's twice as many people here. The first item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which consists solely of the minutes of our August 22nd, 2013 meeting. Is there a motion with respect to the consent agenda?
I would move that we would accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion of these minutes, which were just handed out tonight? Doesn't appear to be. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, that motion carries, and the consent agenda is approved. The minutes are accepted. The next item on our agenda is the Haworth Annexation, which includes a recommendation on a comprehensive plan amendment, recommendation on annexation, and a public hearing and recommendation on zoning of the property to ag zoning, along with an action for minor subdivision of the property. This property is located to the west of town. It's approximately 90 acres, a little bit less. The property is immediately to the west of Larimer County Road 19 and north of Larimer County Road 8. The town board previously accepted a petition for annexation of this property. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it and look forward to your input tonight. We're going to change the agenda just a little bit. The agenda typically or originally provided as consistent with our town code and state statutes that we would just have as regular agenda items a comprehensive plan amendment and the annexation of the property first. And then we would convene a public hearing on recommendation of zoning for the property and a minor subdivision. And these issues are all related, and it just makes sense, we think, to open the public hearing and then proceed through these four items. And it just seems more streamlined rather than having two sets of process, and we just like to make sure that we're able to hear everyone tonight too. So in effect, what we're doing is having the first two agenda items will be heard during the public hearing on the other two items. We're going to follow our typical procedures tonight, which involve first hearing from our planning department with the highlights of these items and receive their recommendation. And then we will have an opportunity for someone to speak on behalf of the applicant. And following that, we will accept public comment. During that time, I'd ask you all to, if you have a comment, raise your hand. I'll call on you and ask you to come to the podium and give us your name and address. We'd like to hear from all of you, but recognize that repetition of prior comments isn't overly helpful, and just try to be reasonable in your time. If it looks like we're headed towards 5 or 6 in the morning, then we'll maybe establish some time limits. I'm not going to do that up front, but I just ask you to try to be brief and try not to repeat someone else's substantive comment.
Mr. Chairman, is there any way we can get sound amplification so that the 25 people outside can hear what's going on? Can we move into the middle here?
I don't know the answer to the amplification part of that, but there is some more room here. I'm happy to have some of you stand in this hallway. Tim, is that all right?
Is this televised?
Yes.
It is? Anybody wants to come over?
Thank you. We're just going to do the best we can, and people are welcome to come in and sit on the steps here. And we have some room back here as well. So, we're all friends. I'd like to make a couple additional. I'd like to make a couple additional clarifying comments, and those relate to the public comment part of this meeting. It will be conducted in an orderly fashion. We have to have that to keep things moving. The public comment period is not a time for exchanges back and forth with the commission or any sort of extensive give and take. What we typically do, and it's not just for this this property, it's for all properties, all projects that come before us. So we'll have the public comment, and then we'll have a response to the comments from our town planning staff. So I ask you to please follow our process, and I'll remind you of it if you go astray. Anything else? Initial, Tim? Sue, anything? Okay, so at this point we will open the public hearing. And we're first going to hear from our town planner, who will walk through the regular agenda items that we're also hearing during the public hearing process, which include a recommendation on the comprehensive plan amendment, recommendation on annexation of the property, and then we'll deal with zoning and minor subdivision. And again, after Mr. Caters is done, there'll be an opportunity for someone to speak on behalf of the applicant, and then we'll hear from the public. So thanks for bearing with us with respect to the amount of space we have, and we'll do the best we can.
And did you open the hearing?
I did.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. I'll have my staff report and a fair amount of material that'll be up on the screen just behind me. For those behind me, you can look right here.
And Tim, I'd just like to remind all of the commissioners to please use your microphones because we do have people spread around this room, but also I think there are probably more people watching on TV than is typical, and the microphone helps with that.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'll give a little background, then I'll walk through these four agenda items in order. Karen Sorenson is representing the estate of Maurice Haworth, and they're seeking the annexation of 83.653 acres of property, and then those associated rights of way on both County Road 19 and 8, which makes a total of another 5.547 acres. The Haworth Estates first and second annexations, they're immediately west of Larimer County Road 19, and they're north of Larimer County Road 8, which essentially is Mountain Avenue if it's extended on the other side of 287. The town board accepted the annexation petition for this property on August 13th. That began the referral review process for the town itself. They are seeking an amendment to the comprehensive plan to designate the property as low-density residential. I'll put up a comprehensive plan probably on the screen later, but the center plan up above Chris's head is the preferred land use plan for the community right now, and these colors on the map are essentially those preferred land uses. So that's the Haworth property right there, and it doesn't have a preferred land use at this point. So the first item that for the Planning Commission to consider when they get to that point is designating a land use for the property itself. Then they are seeking the zoning of the property as within the town's zoning code as A, agriculture. And that's, the zoning map is the map over on the right side of the, our right, over here. And agriculture is the green color you see in a couple of locations on the map over there, our zoning map. That allows up to 1 unit per acre on property that's zoned ag. Then they are seeking a minor subdivision of land to create 3 lots on the property. 2 lots along Larimer County Road 19 being a 5-acre and then a 10-acre lot, so just 15 acres in that. The remainder of the property would be in 1 large lot. I'll shift forward towards the review of the comprehensive plan. So the request here is for a land use designation of low-density residential. Now on that center plan up there again, up on the preferred land use plan, low-density residential does allow between 1 and 2 acres as a preferred land use. Now, what happens when, so that's the comprehensive planned land use is 1 or 2 acres, 1 or 2 units, per acre. And if I take 80 times 2, it's 160. But what's the driving request in this project is the zoning, and I'll be talking about that in a minute, and it's that limitation of 1 unit per acre in the requested zoning. So you'll see in the town materials on this that we'll continue to talk about essentially an 80 kind of, or 81 units as the maximum density on the property. The other option is without a public wastewater utility system. The most you could do in this category is 1 unit per 2.29 acres. Sort of becomes more of a Larimer County kind of a number than a Berthoud density number. On May 30th, this Planning Commission took action to include, made a recommendation to include this property into the town's growth management area. That's a prerequisite for annexing any property. The Board of Trustees certified that on the 11th of June, which essentially made it official that this property is in the town's growth management area. When we look at amending the comprehensive plan in any way, we have to go through, I believe it is 7, and I will look, 7 items. I've got them up on the screen again right here. And these actually are the exact same items that the Planning Commission reviewed at their May 30th meeting when this property and the Jaskowski property were included into the growth management area. In these 7 items are in that resolution that in this exact order. So, number 1 is that the existing comprehensive plan or any related element are in need of amendment. Well, with the request before us to annex the property, and with it inside of the growth management area, it does need to have that land use designation on the property. That designation is necessary in effect to give guidance on what can possibly happen on the property. Number 2 is the proposed amendment is compatible with the surrounding area and the goals and policies of the plan. The proposal doesn't seek to incorporate property that's farmland into Berthoud municipal limits, and communities generally grow in size through those kinds of individual decisions by property owners to annex their land and generally shift that land from farm or open land to developed land. It's no different than the decisions made over the last 125 years to grow the community to this point. Well, property immediately adjacent, Larimer County, remains in those larger lot uses. A designation matching county levels of approvals, for instance, 1 per acre, 1 per 10 acre, 1 per 35, is generally inappropriate for lands within inside of a municipality. Municipalities are much better designed with for the public sewer and street systems that go into smaller parcels. So the proposed land use designation does allow that 1 to 2, but the zoning then limits any density to 1 unit per acre. It's essentially pretty close to the lowest entitlement level that we have here in Berthoud. It supports residential. The requested density supports larger homes on estate-style lots. Essentially, the equivalent to the estates at Matthews Farm. That's the border of that property is 60 feet away from the border of this property. The 2007 plan didn't include land use designations or this area in the growth management area, but the work earlier this year has included it into the growth management area, and the job before us, one of the jobs before us, to now identify that preferred land use. Got a number of the comprehensive plan objectives listed on the screen here. Number 3 is that the proposed amendment will have no major negative impacts on transportation, services, and facilities. A lot of the review of the impacts for transportation, public services, and public facilities occurs during the process to actually develop and complete subdivision and construction plans. And so the question really becomes a different type of question for the commission and the board when they would hear this, is can Berthoud Public Facilities currently absorb the impacts of that 81 kind of units in the community? We do have improvements, and as new development comes into the community, as staff and as commission and board, we work to ensure that each of those developments handles the impacts that their property does generate. And so those applicants at the time pay their share of the costs of those impacts and not the community. Number 4 is that the proposed amendment will have minimal effect on service provision, including adequacy or availability of public facilities and services, and is compatible with existing and planned service provision. The proposed annexation is almost immediately adjacent to town water and wastewater services that are across the road in the villages at Matthews Farm. Larimer County Road 19 is patrolled by the police department and maintained by Public Works. Development in the area west of 287 is contemplated by some of the utility plans in the community. This property is in the Little Thompson Water District service area, and at this point it would be anticipated to be served by them. The town has master meter arrangements in other parts of the community, and we have had no discussions on whether or not that would be the case here. We have wastewater main lines across the property again in the estates at Matthews Farm subdivision, and as well as a very large line at the Parkway Plaza between this property and US 287. Number 5 is that the proposed amendment, if outside of the town's current boundaries, is consistent with the town's ability to annex the property. It is. It meets the standards for annexation of property. Number 6 is that strict adherence to the plan would result in a situation neither intended nor in keeping with other key elements and policies of the plan. So our comprehensive plan has pushing probably 150 or so. I'll get the real number. Got it right here. It's got, oops, I'm sorry, I scroll that. Let's let that catch up. It's got 52 goals and 190 objectives, and I have to figure out why my screen just went crazy. Let's try that. There we go. There we go. It came back. The current comprehensive plan has 52 goals and 192 objectives in it. Many of them deal with the impacts and the look and the feel of the development proposal itself. And so a lot of it deals with designs of subdivisions, street arrangements, storm drainage, gateway, setbacks, those kinds of aspects of projects. And so since we don't have a development proposal other than the 3 lots before us tonight, many of those goals and objectives do not come into play. The property would have to adhere to those goals and policies at the time one of those proposals is brought to the town for consideration. Number 7 is that the plan amendment will promote public welfare and be consistent with the goals and policies of the comp plan and the elements thereof. The expansion of the community is contemplated in the comprehensive plan future land use map, and that also includes the growth management area boundaries. So with the land use designation in that area, that point is met as well. I'll shift to annexation, and let's, if I can find one of my maps. There it is. Let's put an annexation map up here quick. I'll try 50 and see what I get.
Can you speak up a little, please, sir?
Sure, I'll give it a try, you bet. This is the annexation map for the property. You see it comes in a series of 2 annexations that follows provisions of state law that call for a certain amount of about 16% contiguity on each annexation to any community. So the area of town that is the area of Berthoud that is adjacent to this property is this, well, partly. The area of town is, following with my cursor right here, it's this heavy X'd line on the drawing right there. So there's the current town of Berthoud boundaries. That X'd out line right there. I'll make it a little bigger just so we can all see. There we go. So this series of X's here is what's in Berthoud today. So this property is a combination of the contiguity occurs right in this area right here that I'm sort of waving around on this 650-foot, actually plus, about 740-foot distance. And so rights-of-ways are intended to be annexed in their full width when an annexation occurs. You can see that in the past that did not happen on this property here, this lot 1 of the Smith subdivision, and then this annexation took actually only half of the 60-foot right-of-way. So the Haworth annexation would take the entire right-of-way of County Road 19. So it would take this 60-foot distance through here and then a 30-foot distance right there. So the first annexation for the property is essentially across the street. It's 60 feet for this distance away from the town of Berthoud and 30 feet away from the town of Berthoud, right up there where my that arrow is. Then the second annexations can be done in series, and that's the proposal here. And so the second annexation in the series takes the rest of the property in. So we've got a series of 2 annexations on this with this idea. Here's my narrative on that on the map that I just showed you. And so the proposed series of annexations meet the contiguity requirements of Colorado law. The first one is 16.67% contiguous. The second one is 21.11% contiguous with the town boundaries. So when they happen in series, it's a process that is contemplated by the Colorado revised statutes, and it's being followed here. So the property is available and meets state and local requirements for annexation. I'll skip past that. I'll shift to zoning. Again, the applicants are seeking a zoning designation of agriculture, on all of the property. It allows a density of 1 unit per acre. If those units are on public water and wastewater systems, 1 per 2.29 acres where those systems are not in place. It allows current uses to continue on the property, but it would allow the new residential uses at those densities, as well as home occupations, veterinary uses, roadside stands, park, and other public uses. They really have no plans for development of the property at this time. Oops, went the wrong way. I do have a little bit here in my staff report about the difference between sort of that straight division of acreage by the allowed zoning and whether or not that's the numbers that you really get out on the ground kind of a thing. Probably about 20% of any developable property is eaten up by streets, by park requirements, by stormwater drainage requirements, that kind of thing. So I did a calculation here just as a example, that if with about 65 acres available for development, then the ag zoning, those lots in ag zoning need to be 1 acre lots. The best you could probably do on the property is about 65 homes. So the zoning strikes a balance between the larger acreages that remain in agriculture west of 287 and then the needs of the Berthoud community to develop in a manner that supports community facilities and commercial growth in a fiscally balanced community. On my last of the 4 items, I'll talk about the minor subdivision a little bit. And let's see. I'll put up a subdivision map, just about that. It's just a close-up on the subdivision of the property itself. That's County Road 19 over here on the right side of the drawing, and it's Larimer County Road 8 there at the bottom. This little square in the property right here is that Excel pump station. This line cutting across the property is the Excel gas line put in I want to say 1924. And so the Colorado-Wyoming Gas Company heirs and assigns, nowadays Excel, actually owns this little parcel right here. So there's the proposed subdivision of the property into those 3 lots, 5, 10, and then 66.65. It's described right there. It's a very simple subdivision of the land into 3 larger lots, essentially with generally the intent to transfer the portions of the property among the family, and then sell the rest of the property. As we all know, there's a for sale sign on the property, anyone who's driven by it. Full kind of subdivision documents would be required as any condition of any submittal that seeks to further develop or subdivide this property. And so this staff did feel that this met the requirements for a minor subdivision and is in compliance with the development code, I believe. Do you want me to take 5 on that one, or would you like me to continue? Keep going? All right. I'll talk through referral responses here for just a bit. And prior to completing the staff report for the September 12th meeting, we had 1 response from the mailed notices, the publication of notice, or the posting of signs on the property. And that was a phone message on the 3rd of September from Diane Pollock, stating that she and her husband Chris were in opposition. Since then, and my staff report is prior to Sprawl Alert 2, postcard, by the way. but the week of September 9th, about 4,800 residents in this zip code did receive a postcard mailing. And I heard from the people on the list right there. And I'm sorry, I never did get the names of these two residents off the phone calls that were down on County Road 4 west of 287. So I did hear from myself from 9 residents after that first postcard was mailed. Those contacting Town Hall had concerns about the issues raised by the postcard. They advocated for a change in meetings so that probably more folks could sit down. And I informed the folks who did contact me that of the revised hearing dates once we set that. I do have attached to my staff report 13 pages of citizen responses. I also have one on your desk that I received today, I believe, this morning. These were provided to the town by Mrs. Pollock and reflect comments that she'd gotten from postcards or personal contacts or however. Some of the comments address the growth management area aspect of the town of Berthoud. Some talked about the annexation of the property itself or the zoning or the development. So in your packet, I added a few comments on location because we sort of all bump up against where do these people live or what street is this. So I've added that they live in a Pheasant Run subdivision or whatever, just to, in effect, to help the commission members who are less familiar with the town street names know where the comment came from. So it's obvious from the comments that the area residents identify with the town, and anyway, my indication of where they live isn't intended to downplay or marginalize the comments, just to provide clarity. Other responses we've received: Larimer County Engineering, Clint Jones. Number one, while overall they have no major concerns or objections, they stress that it's their expectation that the town annex the entire right-of-way, which this project does. They'd like an opportunity to review traffic and impact studies and drainage studies when the time comes, and we will provide that. With Larimer County Health, their expectation would be that the property involve extending public sewer to it, and they wanted to make us aware of the public service gas line. Berthoud Fire Protection District, there were no conflicts. Little Thompson Water District, no conflicts. And Poudre Valley REA, no conflicts as well. Any questions for me at this point?
I think at this point we'll just follow our usual process, which is to hold questions from the commissioners until the end, until we after we hear from the applicant and hear from the public. I need to take responsibility for one aspect of Tim's report, and that is he called me and said, "Do you think we should have this meeting at the community center?" And based on the fact that at that point there were only 9 comments, it didn't seem to me that it was necessary. I didn't anticipate this turnout, and I'm sorry that it's not as comfortable as it could be. But that's on me, not on Tim or anyone else at the town staff. So my apologies. At this point,
floods in between that might have kept people from responding.
understand. I understand.
I just wanted to note that there are 33 people outside.
Would you like to? I mean, we still have standing room here. Okay. When that's the best, I don't know what else we can do at this point.
If folks want to point at stuff, then they just have to. If folks want to say, "Could you put up a map?" then I would need to do that.
Don't know the answer to that.
We're going to get into a capacity issue.
Yeah.
Keep piling people in, then it becomes unsafe.
All right, fair. Let's be careful. We'll let everyone come in to present their comments, and maybe after you present your comment, you want to watch the rest of the night on television, that may be one way to make more room here as well. Just a thought, we're only going to have one. All right, let's stay orderly here. We're only going to have one round of public comments. That's it. So you're not going to miss anything if you go back and watch it on TV.
Is there a place in this building where these people can watch it on TV in another area?
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah. Yeah.
There's not room on the TV that 10 or 15 people can watch and then come in here and they need to make comments?
Well, the only TV that we have is a small office.
So I do also want to point out that tonight is the Planning Commission hearing this and making a recommendation to the town board. That's another opportunity for public comment at the town board level. So this is a recommendation to the town board, and the town board makes the final decisions. Okay, last question before we go here.
It's not a question, but just that those of us that live out of town, we don't have access to Comcast. So we can't watch it on TV. They don't service us out.
Okay. We're just, for tonight, it is what it is, and we're going to have to do the best we can. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's kind of the downside of Comcast.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't think so. TV at the community center?
Not that I'm aware of.
Listen, we're just going to have to do the best we can tonight, and I think maybe for the town board meeting, this will be a preview of maybe some different planning that needs to take place. But again, at the time when this meeting was scheduled, we had 9 comments, and I understand things have developed since then. But it is what it is, and we're just going to have to do the best we can and stay friendly and polite. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Caters. At this point, is there someone who'd like to speak on behalf of the applicant? If so, please come up to the podium and address the commission.
Hi, my name is Karen Sorenson. My family owns a Haworth property located at 509 North County Road 19 in Berthoud. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, my name is Karen Sorenson. My family owns a Haworth property located at 509 North County Road 19 in Berthoud. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, my sister Marilyn Allen, and brothers Chuck Haworth and Stan Haworth. First off, we would like to thank the town and all the board and committee members for being both professional and courteous throughout this whole process. Also, thanks to all the neighbors who stopped by the farm to visit with us to voice their concerns for or against us. Originally, we were requesting R1 zoning, which allows up to 6 units per acre, but we were only asking for 4. However, after listening to the opposing concerns, we decided to compromise and ask for ag zoning with 1 unit per acre. Every parcel has a zoning designation. Ours is FA1. Under zoning FA1, I would like to summarize the first 3 options for land division in Larimer County. One is a subdivision, section 5.1, would allow a maximum of 1 unit per 2.3 acres, but in order to qualify, the parcel must be less than 30 acres. Number 2 is a conservation development, section 5.3, which allows cluster developments on smaller lots with 50 to 80% of the parcel placed in a conservation easement. Number 3 is planned land division, section 5.2. It's used for a land division that is located in a GMA overlay zone subject to an intergovernmental agreement between the county and the applicable city or town. We have more than 30 acres, so option 1 is out, and option 3 is non-applicable. For any of those 3 options, we would have to be licensed builders with licensed engineers and surveyors, which we are not. Therefore, none of those 3 options are available to us. All we were asking for is annexation. We're not proposing a subdivision. So the sprawl alert postcards that were sent out contained erroneous information. Our property does not already qualify for a subdivision and is not currently zoned for up to 37 homes through the county. And if I was a licensed engineer, I wouldn't be working as a retail cashier. When a mailing goes out to 4,800 people twice, it's like a political advertisement. The written word can be a powerful tool, so when presented as a scare tactic, wrongful information can override fact. Our fourth option through the county was with the rural land use process, which required 67% of the land to be set aside for 40 years as a conservation easement. That would allow us to carve out the homestead to include 10 acres so we could have a buildable legal lot to keep in our family. Going through the process was when the town voiced their concerns that with the 40-year conservation easement, it would limit future growth of the town of Berthoud, and so encouraged us to consider annexation. I can assure you it was not offered as a free service or even a discounted service. And the annexation is what our family has tried since like 2004 to get done. So when the town told us that that would be an option for us, we decided to pursue that. So Berthoud became a town in 1888. Our family has owned our farm since 1901. If our father would have been against growth, he would never have sold off part of his acreage. He certainly didn't do it for the money. So for the opposing neighbors to the north, you should be thanking him for making your slice of heaven possible. And for the opposing neighbors to the west, he would have never thought of opposing that cut up of that farm, so you could have your slice of heaven. Back in 1901, when our family first came to rural Colorado, a mere 13 years after the town came into existence, had there not been the promise of growth, they probably would not have settled here. Progress brings business, progress brings amenities, progress brings jobs, and allows your children and grandchildren the opportunity to stay where their roots are. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Sorenson. We appreciate it. Okay, at this point, we'll begin our very orderly public comment process, and I would suggest that if you have comment, maybe we can, I was going to suggest that we start over here, but maybe some folks need to leave. So let's just...
Can we just pass the mic, and that way they don't have to try to navigate through the crowd?
I think that's a great idea.
And it is televised in town. So that would be on...
Yeah.
The suggestion was to pass the mic, and it is televised in town at least, so it's probably better to have somebody speak here.
I think that's right. I think we need to do that, and that's our typical process, is to have you come to the podium. So let's just see how this goes. I said initially that I wasn't going to have a firm time limit, but give your neighbors a chance to talk too. So let's shoot for 3 minutes each. I don't have a clock, but just shoot for that, and we'll see how this goes. All right, who'd like to be first? Yes, ma'am. Please come to our podium and give us your name and address for the record.
Okay, if you can't hear me, please let me know. My name's Lonnie Goday, and I do live west of town. I am actually reading information that Jeff Hyndman sent because he was not able to be here today. This provides a little bit of background information.
Chris, do you know I have the address?
My address?
Yeah.
3000 Lake Hollow in Forbes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There are several serious issues with the Haworth Comp Plan Amendment and annexation. It is incumbent upon you, as a commissioner, to do what is best for the town and surrounding area. The biggest problem with this annexation is that it reverses a long-standing town policy to keep Berthoud's western boundary at County Road 19. This was a huge issue from 2004 to 2007 during the last comp plan update. The overwhelming consensus of hundreds of participants in that community-wide process was that the town should concentrate development east of the new 287 corridor for several reasons. The first was to maintain the agricultural and rural areas west of town and to avoid conflicts with existing development in the county, and to avoid the cost of servicing patchwork town development intermingled with county subdivisions. The town has long prioritized preserving working agricultural land in outlying areas since farming is the heritage of Berthoud. The town has had a right to farm policy since the late 1990s. At that time, the town worked very hard to preserve several working farms east and south of Berthoud with a conservation easement. In the case of the Haworth land, in 2012, the property owners worked with the Larimer County rural land use process to develop a plan for 3 residential lots, as was mentioned by Ms. Sorenson, 1 ag building lot, and 60 acres of residual farmland that would be preserved in a conservation easement. Instead of endorsing the plan, the town staff and trustees expressed their desire that the property be annexed so it could be developed into the town. At the time, the board and staff opposed the rural land use plan and invited annexation. The Haworth property was outside of the town's growth management area and was not eligible for annexation. Berthoud would have Berthoud turned down a win-win agreement that was proposed by the Haworth family and would have resulted in an open space parcel as our western gateway into town at no cost to taxpayers. In my opinion, that is a very flawed decision-making on the part of our elected officials and staff. Secondly, the town's annexation impact report has no fiscal analysis at all of the financial impact on the town from the cost versus projected revenue from development of the land. How can the P&Z or the town board make a sound decision on this controversial issue without knowing what it will cost the town? Again, how many bad decisions does Berthoud want to make on this issue? It did not then, nor does it now, make economic sense for the town to incur the cost of providing services in areas now served by the county. The only argument for economic gain to the town would be a very high-density development, and that would be inappropriate west of County Road 19. Finally, a very important part of how government functions is the process taken to make major decisions and changes in town policy. The process used to encourage the Haworths to annex has been handled completely wrong by the town. Invitations and encouragement were made to annex before the property was eligible. Then the most controversial aspect of the 2007 comp plan, the western boundary, was changed with very little public input to allow the annexation application to be accepted by the town. Instead of widely advertising a possible major change in the GMA and seeking citizen input, the town and the newspaper seem to have been trying to keep this issue under the radar. All of this activity to annex land west of the 2007 GMA was done during a time when a volunteer committee was working to update the comp plan and the GMA map. Proceeding with annexation prior to the comp plan update being completed precludes any future decision by the comp plan update committee or the P&Z to keep the western boundary at LCR 19. After annexation, there is no going back. In 2003, I worked very hard with a diverse group of town residents to help run the campaign to overturn the very flawed 2% growth cap that was in effect from 1999 to 2003 and which severely crippled our local economy. Spent over $3,000 of our family's money to make this campaign successful. As part of that campaign, we promised voters the town would follow growth policies that made common sense and protected the character of the town. It now seems the town is working hard to break that promise. At the very least, this annexation needs to be delayed until there is more information for you, the decision makers. However, I believe there is ample evidence that you should conclude tonight to recommend denial of the annexation and ask the Haworths to go back to their plans with Larimer County and help them expedite that approval instead of delaying this like the last go-round. I think Berthoud owes them an apology for bringing this issue back yet again. Thanks very much for considering my opinions. Again, this is from Jeff Hindman, who is a trustee and also on P&Z.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's hold our applause till the very end. How about that?
I had given you in your packet 13 previous letters that I've received. I have another one that I received today. I'm Diane Pollock, 2604 West County Road 8, Berthoud. Many people will be coming forward to speak to you tonight about the proposed annexation and comp plan amendment. I would like to make it very clear from the outset that we are not just a bunch of anti-growthers. We understand very well and support town growth to keep our town vibrant and current. However, we only support smart, cohesive growth from within the current GMA boundaries because there is much room for growth already, which you will hear from someone later. But now, I'd like to ask each of you why you have come to live in Berthoud. Is it because, or if you were raised here, why did you stay? Or why did you come back to your hometown? Was it because you loved the town that was small, quiet, quaint, friendly, caring, and safe? Or was it because you saw an opportunity to dramatically change it into something that you came from? Large, sprawling, loud, unfriendly, and unneighborly? I would venture to guess that it's the former rather than the latter. Why then would you want to turn our unique little town...
Turn it on. Hang on a second. On TV, it seems like maybe you're not coming.
Why then would you want to turn our unique little town into any town USA? Berthoud is unique and Berthoud is special. There isn't another town along the Front Range, from Pueblo to Cheyenne, that is like it. I know this personally because my husband and I searched for a town like Berthoud to raise our children in and build a life for them that would have values and small-town morals in which to grow up safely. Why would you want to lose that quality? Why would you want to change what is desirable about our town and turn it everything that is undesirable about a town? Sprawling growth isn't the answer to Berthoud's problems. We need to keep a town center and use the resources that are in the town's existing urban growth area. It is very important to keep Berthoud the agricultural-based town that it has become very well known for and the envy of towns and cities along the Front Range. Another point that I have to ask you is, are you sure that you want an urban enclave surrounded by county-sized lots that have farm odors, sounds, dust, and other country living daily routines? This is a right-to-farm community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pollack. Who's next? Mr. Pollack.
Good evening. My name is Chris Pollack. I live at 2604 West County Road 8, just west of the Haworth subdivision. At the Planning and Zoning meeting on May 30th of this year, the Haworth family had said that all they want is 4 lots. And in fact, at that meeting, I said, I hope you get your 4 lots. My question is, what's changed? All of a sudden now, the density has gone up to what seems could be either 130 to 160 houses if it does go to the 2 units per acre. In 2007, the comp plan, as well known, was strongly debated. The result was the GMA stopped at County Road 19, and the feathering was to be west of 287 in Belcaro subdivision with, I believe, they're 2.3 acre lots, was a result of that. A nice feathering from 287 to the west to the more rural lots. In fact, Berthoud's mayor lives in Belcara and enjoys that. I want to stress that there are approximately 12 subdivisions that have already been approved and currently in the current GMA. Currently, there are approximately 1,900 houses in Berthoud. 4 of these approved subdivisions are Prairie Star, which has 900 homes, O'Malley Glen with 835 homes, Trails at Sugar Creek, 400 homes, and Heron Lakes with 670 homes. This comes up to 2,805 units, more than doubling the size of Berthoud. We do not need more rooftop subdivisions. We need business economy to come to Berthoud. It is important to support the developers who have already invested in Berthoud and have approved subdivisions. And just as a point of clarification, Tim pointed out that the ag zoning does allow for 1 unit per acre, but the comprehensive plan, which I understand establishes the density, it allows up to 2 units per acre. So at some point in time, I'd like a clarification on that point. And I would say that I think people in the room here are saying no to Berthoud sprawl to the west and no to annexation of this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pollack. Anybody else? I thought there might be. Is there?
My name is John Thompson. I live at 2605 West County Road 8, just catty-corner from the Haworth property. For over 24 years, my family has lived there. I believe that we should all be concerned with Berthoud's ability to provide basic services for the annexation. Police protection is already stretched with the area of Berthoud that is grown to. Read the paper. They can't even police secure their own parks and that. So you're adding more. You said it was already policing out there along County Road 19, but if you put another 600 or, excuse me, 60-plus homes, that's going to stretch them that much more.
Sir, could you try to hold the microphone a little more? Closer enough. Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
The water is currently provided by the Little Thompson Water District, which you've stated, but so that will not provide any revenue whatsoever, tap fees or monthly water fees to the town of Berthoud. Will not help you pay for a new water plant or whatever you might incur. There is a IGA in place with the Little Thompson Water District. That IGA can be changed and amended, but if you read it, it will cost the town of Berthoud a lot of money. So you don't see much gain out of for the financial end. And I don't want to speak for Little Thompson. I don't know that they would be even interested in their business's water. Why would they want to give up potential water sales? Road maintenance is another one. You've got County Road 19, and now you would take on over a half mile of County Road 8. That's a highly traveled major road. Is Berthoud ready to take on that? And in the past few years, the town limits have grown, so do we really have the ability to handle this? Also, you're saying it's an egg. That area has all kinds of different animals being raised in it. You go in and you put people that are expecting to live in a residential type atmosphere. And there are pigs that are raised out there. You've got odor problems, unfortunately. Do you want to get back into the same situation you had a few years ago with the east side of town? I think you luckily got out of that because the guy raising hogs has gotten old enough he can't. But do you want to keep going along with that? So by making his farming, where are you going? If you make it into more like a rural 1 house to 2.9 acres, that gets the type of people that they don't mind. They're moved into the country, they accept the country. And hopefully that we can all come to an agreement on this. I know Berthoud must grow. You have to grow to survive. You proved that in the past 20 years. You can't have no growth. Your costs continue to go up. But you've got all kinds of areas, as Chris mentioned, you got over 2,800 home sites that are waiting to be built on. Why do we need to add more? You've got all the area to the east. Why not take advantage of that? You're not being encroached in your land or your development by any other towns or cities to the west. You don't have to worry about that. So why not put your efforts into taking care of what you've got? And even if you want more revenue, commercial will get you the sales tax, which pays a lot more than residential. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Who's next? Ms. Carney?
Thank you. Elizabeth Carney, 1600 West County Road 10E. I also have an office a block from here at 549 4th Street. I have two issues. One of them is that the reason that all these people are here is that there's a feeling that the procedure and the process hasn't been followed, and that some kind of underhanded moves took place that shouldn't have happened. That's why you have this enormous group of people that has shown up at this meeting. And we need to go back to the zoning proposal that the Haworths brought to you where the county had approved. The lots they needed, they had approved. 60 acres of open space that was going to continue to be farmed. That is irrigated farm ground. You don't get more irrigated farm ground once you shut it down. And I know that there were comments at the May meeting that I attended where there were only about 5 of us, that there are property rights issues. Well, the actual property right issue is the person purchases the property and that's the right they have. They have agricultural land. So if you're asserting that because they want to be annexed, they have the right to be annexed, that is absolutely incorrect. The real duty of this board and the town board is to safeguard and be the fiduciaries of the people of Berthoud. It is not to safeguard the rights of people to come in and develop commercial areas or residential areas and make a living building homes here. We have plenty of lots. We welcome developers. The town has worked very hard to be clear that they welcome developers, and I think that word is out. The second issue, item number 4 on the list of things that must be considered, are negative impacts on service provision. Well, I live on County Road 10E, and that road was turned, County Road 10E, west of County Road 17, so over the new highway bridge, and then down to the south. That road was taken over by Berthoud when Heron Lakes was approved. That road is dangerous. There have been 2 rollover accidents in the last 24 months on that road. My daughter was involved in one of them, and it was because there's too much gravel on the edges of the road, and there are washboards in the middle of the road. That road was never in that condition when the county had it. And I lived on the road for 8 years before Berthoud took it over. So I know exactly what condition the road was in before Berthoud had it, and I know exactly what condition it is in now. And if you want to go out there and drive it right now, you better not go very fast, because you will go off the road. So Berthoud is supposed to maintain all of its infrastructure in a safe manner. That road is not safe right now, and one of the things that this annexation will do is create more miles of road with more people using them that can't be maintained. So I think there are some really serious issues. One of them is the feeling that the public trust has been violated by the way this deal came down. And the second is that there are some serious safety issues that all of you better think about, because you don't want to be sitting in this room when some kid rolls their car out there and dies. And that's a very real possibility. Thank you. And I'm very glad that you have these meetings, but I wish we had a bigger room.
I'm sorry, Ms. Carney, I'm sorry.
That's
Thank you for your
okay.
comments. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Steve Gardner, and I live at 3833 West County Road 8, and I've lived there since '77. And in the '70s and the '80s, County Road 8 was just a lonely country road. And then they built, the county allowed all these houses on 35-acre lots up around the corner from me, and Berthoud Estates had always been there. It was never a problem. And now, Margot and I used to say, watch, somebody will never get out of our driveway because there'll just be cars all over, and there were never cars. We never had to look. Now, you rarely get out of the driveway without a car. And then going to Berthoud, God knows how many cars you have. And hit the interstate, it's a joke. Because you're about to put a double yellow line everywhere. And so that's the part for me.
Yeah, please speak in the microphone.
Just is it on?
I don't think it's on.
Yeah, the lights on. Batteries dead. That sounds like it works. Okay, is that any better? Yes. Good. So I'll start over. I'm Steve Gardner. I live at 3833 West County Road 8. One thing, though, my in-laws live at a place in Knoxville that's beautiful out on the end of this lonely, twisty, windy road, totally lined with subdivisions. And they said when they moved there in the early 30s, they never saw a car. And they used to count how many cars would go by. Ever since I was on that road, it was a lot of cars. And mine's like that. We talked about her parents and that. What's going to happen when our road gets like that? And it's like that. And so it's, to me, the traffic is already a problem. And to say that adding 60 more houses on a 2-lane road isn't going to affect traffic is just not right. You could say it's not going to affect it a lot, but to say it's not going to affect it is just foolish. That's only my opinion. Traffic.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Yes, ma'am.
This is coming down.
My name's Maya Matisse Lorenzen, and I live at 5325 Gary Drive. I live west of town, and those of us who do live west of town don't have access right now to County Road 23 or 21. And up till recently, we didn't have access to County Road 4 due to the floods. So we only had County Road 8 to travel, and there's been a lot of traffic. Those of us who live out there know, until they opened up County Road 4. So we add more homes, more traffic. But aside from that, I guess my big concern is schools. I work around the schools, mainly Berthoud Elementary School, and as we've been growing and adding new housing, our classroom sizes have gone up. And when my kids went to Berthoud Elementary, we had 22 to a class, 24. Now it's not uncommon to have 30, 32 kids to a classroom. I moved here because I like a small town. You know what? I like the smell of horses. I do. It doesn't bother me. I like the coyotes. You know, I like the country. If I wanted urban development, I'd live in Longmont or Loveland. So what concerns me is, and I will address that when we have our town meeting, is I'm very concerned that I don't have representation out rurally. We have no representatives here to represent our interests, but we have people that don't even live in our community that are making decisions for our community. I'm not okay with that. So yes, we need to develop, but if there's there's property we already have that we're not doing anything with, let's focus on what we have. And I underscore what Mrs. Kearney said. Everything you said, ditto. I'm here because I don't like how this got handled. I don't like how I heard about it, and thank goodness for people who did hear about it, who advocated and let our community know. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next? Sir?
Ken Benker, 20, yeah. Ken Benker, 2475 West County Road 10. First off, I want to address the board and talk about your comprehensive plan. And, you know, I can appreciate the process here. The process is that we have 7 members.
A little closer.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
We have 7 members, and the idea is to have a collaborative input from the community and make the right decision. I think that the showing tonight is representative, and you've heard all of our opinions. Just want to point out a little bit of the organization that's gone behind the scenes. I have a list here from 2 different sources. There's over 100 names here. So there's a few overlapping, but basically there's 100 people that signed up and said they oppose this. And I want to point out, it's not from the anti-growth. It was clearly that the process of what was originally offered was far more doable, and now it's kind of morphed itself into a change. Something else I want to point out is Tim Caters, when he pointed out that this development is close to New Matthews Farms. That was a very important point. You said it was kind of close. It was representative, but not exactly. That's an important point that the board should understand. The Matthews Farm is zoned the way it is, and this is different. And it's different in the fact that we don't have green space, there's not a plan, there's a lot of acreage that's devoted to an open area on the Matthews that is not in this particular area, although we have a 10-acre tract, a 5-acre tract, etc., but that's not really dedicated to anything. So the density of this is really not the same. The density is higher. And I think that's an important distinction that we should pick out. So, looking at the comprehensive plan, I like to go fast forward 20 years, look forward. You know, the baby boomers here, they're all going to be inheriting mom and dad's farm, and they're all going to say, hey, it's time to cash in. I got to get my inheritance. I want to annex it. This rooftop game is a zero-sum game. The comprehensive plan, although it's not really designed to address the details of business, the comprehensive plan needs to address those issues. It needs to attract businesses, not rooftops. That's where the real growth is going to be at. That's what's going to make a community be attractive to businesses. Let's take Prairie Star, for example. A 900-unit development touted is going to be a innovative, technologically advanced, solar, whatever you want to apply to there, okay? And now we have a comprehensive plan that doesn't have the details of simple things, a simple issue of how the borough is going to support simple recycling or recycling material. We have Loveland to the north and Longwood to the south. They're doing recycling. I'm not trying to focus on recycling. I'm just trying to point out a very small element of what the comprehensive plan doesn't do. I don't know, I've never looked at it, but I don't think the comprehensive plan addresses who's going to pay for all the stoplights, for all this growth that has been talked about. I don't know if it's talked about the expenses and how we're going to cover that. I think the case of the roads, I think that's an important consideration. Until that comprehensive plan has those elements in there, you don't have a comprehensive plan. So in closing, after we sit down, we're not going to be able to rebut anything. Leadership is going to say, you know, maybe they didn't have all the facts right. Maybe there might even be, gee, the Haworths have been in this process for a long time, and we need to grant this thing to them. I want to ask the junior members of this board to have the strength and to say no to this. And the reason why is because we have seen a Band-Aid effect, or we're looking at an amendment onto the comprehensive plan. We're going to be Band-Aiding this thing just for one application here and application there. This has to not go on. We can't be Band-Aiding the thing. This is exactly how we're going to get piecemeal. Look at the map itself. I mean, you have a core area, then you have this blank hole, and then you have another core area. I can see it now, 20 years from now. Here comes the city of Loveland, here comes the city of Longmont, right in the middle of there. Is that what you guys want? So we need to be thinking about that. This land is going to be here, it's going to develop, it's going to be into housing. It's just not going to be an albatross around Berthoud's neck in terms of the expense that it's going to bring to the table. So you're going to get the rooftops one way or the other. Why are you annexing it then? That's the question to the board. What are you gaining out of this? Are we chasing the money? Are we chasing taps? What are we going after? We need to follow this.
I need you to kind of wrap up, Mr. Gardner.
Okay.
I did hear you say in closing a little bit ago.
In closing. In closing, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. I appreciate it. Who's next?
Can I go next?
Yes, ma'am.
Up on that microphone, please.
Did you like my pop-up from the ground? I'm Nancy Lamb, 1101 North County Road 19, and I just wanted to bring a few things to everyone's attention. Is one, when you talk about ag zoning, I don't believe any of the developed property on the map actually stays in ag. And that ag is typically used as a transition before it becomes developed. And then once it gets ready to be developed, it moves up from ag, which means it's no longer at the one house per acre, and it would really fall back on its land use category, which we have as a low density right now, which is really 1 to 2 houses per acre. And it seems like things always go to the higher end of what's available. So you'd probably have 2 houses per acre, so 135 to 160. So what I'd like to bring to the group's attention is that we need to keep it at the very low density, because the plan in the comprehensive plan for 56 was to keep all the land along 56 in very low density. So the middle flagpole that goes between the center of Berthoud out to I-25 is all in the very low density. Belcaro Estates, which is across from this property, is in the very low density.
And the plan was to follow very low density out 56. So I wanted to ask that if in fact you end up annexing it, if you would strongly consider very low density and not low density, because the center of the old part of town is really low density, and that does not look feathering to me. So that's one thing I'd like you to consider. The other thing is for to move west of County Road 19 is a start. And once you start that process, then there is no line. The line in the sand was County Road 19, and once you move west, there's no end, because you can see the little box out of that whole section. That whole section is rural, and at some point will be available for just this. So I hope you'll consider not making that leap across County Road 19 and really keeping that development as one house per 2.29 acres, which is what Belcaro is, and not really providing 4 times the number of houses on this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm really going to be switching gears on all of you right now.
That'll wake us up. That'll be good. Come on.
Janice Gibb on 613 Sundown Court, Larimer County. However this plays out, wherever it goes, these are some of the things you should know. We talked about coyotes, we talked about pigs. My discussion, or my point, is eagle. Located on... I'm sorry. Your concern is what? Eagles, bald eagles. Located adjacent to the Pollock and Mazza properties, as a volunteer, I have been monitoring for the Colorado Division of Wildlife, which is now Colorado Parks and Wildlife, for over 7 years, a nest of bald eagles. Number 14A, which is also known as the original nest tree, on the adjacent to the Pollock house, and nest 14B, which is adjacent to the Mazza. 14B is now the present active nest. This nest tree has for 7 consecutive years successfully breeded from the same mating pair 2 to 3 eagles every year. They have fledged every year. This is a winter nest, and there are only 60 in the state of Colorado, winter nesting nests. And this is the same net pair because they have tags on. I can read their tags. I know who's there. Sorry, I'm nervous.
You're doing great.
Human activity and construction and noise is one thing that will disturb a nesting pair. There should be at least a quarter of a mile from the nest area. The nest should have open view from where they are, and they fly from the roost original tree to the nest tree, and they have to have clear vision between those 2 trees. And that roosting nest is where the pair comes in. They bring their fledges into that roosting nest. They teach them to fly, or they have flown them there. They stayed with them. I wish people were as dedicated to these families. And also the federal guidelines, federal guidelines suggest no construction within a quarter mile with no disruptive development for this roosting pair and for the nest. The guidelines for the Colorado Park and Wildlife should be observed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibb. I would like to ask you again, let's hold the applause, please. We can, at the end, we'll give you a chance, but I did like hearing about the Eagles. Who's next? In the back.
Hello. My name's Katie Nelson. I live with my fiance up on 406 Longs Peak Avenue. And I'll be brief because I agree with what everyone has said here, especially the last woman. But I just want to say we don't live out west, so we don't have the same concerns, or at least we don't have to have the same effects. But we moved here because this town is small. We moved here because we enjoy that atmosphere, the ability to know our neighbors and to live in a small town. And seeing it grow like this uncontrollably, it saddens me because I didn't want to move to Longmont. I didn't want to move to Loveland. I didn't want to move anywhere else because I didn't want to live in that kind of atmosphere. And it concerns me to see this happen. And it concerns me that we weren't taken into consideration. And that the planning happened without us knowing about it. So I just want to say from the perspective of someone who did move here into one of these subdivisions, that I would prefer for it to stay the way that it is and not to annex this extra land.
Thank you very much. Who's next? That's right. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
I'm Angela Mangan Thompson. I'm a Berthoud native, a 24-year neighbor to the Haworth property. I respect your time as well as everybody that has been in this room tonight. I know you have a tough decision to make. It's not going to please everyone, and you need to be prepared for that. And you are, I know, making recommendations to the town trustees, of which 2 are here and are hearing it. So you need to consider that we ask that you be respectful of the rural gateway into Berthoud that we support and we call our town. Growth is inevitable. We're not against growth. We just want to see it be more well-managed growth. We ask that if you do recommend this for annexation, that you keep it very, very low density, no more than 1 house for 2.29 acres, so we can continue to have our lifestyle that we enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead. No, please.
Hi, Steve Byers, 201 East Michigan Avenue. Like the young lady, we live in town. And so one of the things that I really appreciate about this town is that divide between town and country, and echoing all the same feelings that everybody's had about why we live here. One of my biggest concerns, though, has been in relation to this. First concern is that this strikes me as a bastard flagpole annexation. Second concern is that when we went through the comp plan last time, hundreds of people were given the opportunity to contribute to that. We had it at the community center. Consultants were brought in to facilitate, solicit opinion across the entire town, not just in town, not just out of town, across the whole cross-section of town. That seems to be missing this time. It's really been quiet. I don't think anything malicious is happening, but it is radically different this time. And so if we're going to have a revision to the comp plan that envisions gutting the soul of Berthoud and moving it out to commercial centers on 287, I would suggest that we solicit a little more opinion from people than the 9 volunteer members who I appreciate that they offered their service. But I think we're missing something this time around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byers.
Barb Emmel, 3001 Martindale Drive. There's been a lot said here tonight, but what I would like to ask is that, as this fellow just said, we had no idea that this annexation was moving forward until about 3 weeks ago when all the postcard mailings went out. And that doesn't give us much time to even begin to understand the issues or respond to them. So one of the things I would ask is, it seems to me that this is somewhat of a hidden agenda, and I would like to know who stands to profit the most by this annexation. Certainly not those of us who choose to live in this rural setting. Most of the things I was going to say have been touched upon, but one of the things I would wonder, is this going to be more of a bedroom community with absolutely no sense of place? Will we look like every other small town, like that has their town center with their large supermarket, the string of little stores? They all look the same. There's no difference that we have now in Berthoud. We have a real sense of place here. That will be destroyed if we move towards the west. I would ask, what would we like our future to look like? And then I think there was one road issue that hasn't been mentioned possibly, and that is as you turn west off of off of 287 with that very short access onto 56, it's very dangerous as it is now. If you forget to look at the stoplight where people are coming through from the town of Berthoud onto 56, it's a prescription for a large collision there. That access is very short and poorly designed, I would think. I'm not an engineer, but I don't think it will serve that portion of 56 very well at all. So that would be, I would think that would entail some major redesign. And who would pay for that? Is that a CDOT issue? Would that be the town of Berthoud? Would that be the developer? I think that intersection is very important to take into consideration. And lastly, I would just like to add that every time I drive west on Highway 56, Longs Peak and the adjacent mountains grace me with their presence. The road is also flanked by two lovely classic white barns, so characteristic of our rural landscape. This view will be lost forever, and the new horizon will become a sea of rooftops, not the mountains in the distance. This is a huge mistake, and if it goes forward, the history of this community will be changed forever. And it will set a future precedent that we may not like. Thank you.
You just can't help yourselves, can you? Who's next? Anybody else wish to address the commission? Yes, sir. Take your time. I'll bet.
My name is Will Cummings. I live at 710 Big Oak Court in Berthoud Estates. And the reason I'm here tonight was to find out what this was all about. I was out of town when the first postcard came out and thought, well, I've missed it, so, well, whatever. But then when the second one came out, it's like I had another opportunity to come see what's going on. And I don't fully understand annexation other than I lived through it down in Jefferson County when Littleton was doing flagpole annexations everywhere. I just, I understand the property owners need to do something with the property that would help them, benefit them. They are the owners. They ought to be able to do what they want to do with it within law. But it sounds to me like there are other options that, or at least one other option that wasn't completely looked at. And certainly from the size of the crowd here, very little in terms of information was sent out or or available, or we weren't, I don't know. I don't know how you would look up something like this to find out all the details, to figure out what's really going on, what are the pros and cons, and all that stuff, to have real good input. So anyway, I would hope that maybe we could prolong the process somehow so that more of us could be educated on what all the issues are. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Who's next?
I will be.
Okay.
My name is John Ellis. I live at 435 South County Road 23, west of Berthoud. I grew up on a farm in Iowa, which my family still farms back there. I understand where the family's coming from. They want to get some money for their family and to live on. But I farm west of Berthoud, run big equipment just like probably other guys that are in here. It's hard to move our equipment up and down the roads now. Okay? I love the farm that's out there, guys. If I had won the lotto, I'd have bought it from you, and it'd have stayed at a farm. Okay? I just love it that much. But we got to figure out a way to help them. I understand that, but the way I've heard, you build 100, how many houses you go put in there? Even 60 houses. I can't believe the traffic that will be out there. It's bad. It's really bad. I live on 23. It's a drag race out there. Got people coming from north and Loveland. They drive down through there, and if they ever hit my kid, they're in trouble. I mean, it's bad. The other thing is, I'm a school bus driver for Thompson School District, and I drive that road 4 times a day, and people don't stop now for your children. Okay, your children. They don't stop now. For our red lights are out, our stop signs are out. They don't stop. Okay? That's your children. What's going to happen? You add that many more cars out there. So, not a lot more to say except that I farm 250 acres west of town on an old farm that's west of here that a family has been on for many years. We try and put manure down on a farm on that property, and I'm already having problems with people moving in. From a guy from California doesn't want us doing that. Okay, it's a right to farm state, and you move more people in like that, you got farmers all around that place out there. What are they going to do? You're going to take their livelihood away. Okay, so and you have a beautiful farm, by the way.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Anybody else? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Jenny Brown, 506 County Road 48 here in Berthoud. I'm representing myself and my husband Matt Brown tonight. I'd like to introduce myself as someone who grew up here. In fact, my husband and I both grew up here west of town. And we moved away, we went to college, we lived in Wellington for a while, and then we recently had the opportunity to find a place that we decided we wanted to raise our 2 little boys. And you know what? We chose to move back to this small town that had controlled growth because we very easily could have chosen to move and buy a small acreage in Johnstown, and you know what, quite frankly, it would have been a lot less expensive for us to do so. And that is no joke. But we decided, knowing the growth plan for Berthoud, that we would move here because it was supposed to be a controlled, under control, well-managed growth plan. And now you're considering these flagpole annexations. What's next, I ask you? Please consider what may be next if you take this action. Tim, I love your photo on your backdrop. In fact, I'm sure you didn't. But why don't you plant another 160 homes in that photo and see how that makes that look?
That was kind of a cheap shot, Jenny.
Well, I'm talking about a C right. No, that's not 160. 60 homes. That's not a high-density subdivision right there.
That's why you took the picture.
Right. That's why you took the picture, because it's beautiful, isn't it? Now I want to make a point. Berthoud, you can gain money. You can gain sales tax revenue. And you know what? Berthoud needs more businesses in the business center. We are not anti-growth. In fact, my husband's in construction. He works for a large developer in this area. We are for smart growth. We are for growth that makes sense to the town of Berthoud and from growing from the center out. If you start hop, skipping, and jumping over these county-level density subdivisions and through and finding your piecemeal makeshift town to the west, it does not make sense. I'd like to paint a beautiful picture, and it's somewhat of the picture that the lady mentioned earlier. When you cross County Road 19, what do you see? You see vast open spaces, you see the two beautiful white barns, and you see Long's Peak. You will lose that, as she said, if you see a sea of houses planted right there. I want to give you the information that you need to consider. When people move to the county and they have the intent of living in a county density subdivision, or if they buy a small acreage in the county, that is why they decided to move there. They did not decide to move there for the future of the town annexing these flagpole pieces of property. It doesn't make sense to Berthoud. You already have, as the gentleman provided earlier, 2,800 homes to build and to grow your town on. Let's do that first. Let's move east and then see what Berthoud brings us. Thank you so much for your consideration tonight, and thank you for considering the young people who have chosen to move back and raise their families here, because it's not just myself. I know several others who have as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
It's just 5 seconds.
Who's next? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Nancy Coe. I live at 601 Canis Court. And my question is, it has to do with the traffic on 56, which everybody's talked about before. But what I'm asking is, you're looking at the impact of this one development. But then you're using this one development to spring on to another development or another development. That road, 21, 23, 56, the impact, cumulative impact of all these piecemeal subdivisions need to be looked at, because then by the time you get to the last subdivision, you say, oh my God, it's a problem. It's already a problem. So you need to look at it in a comprehensive manner with the cumulative effects. If you say, here's the effects due to 3 subdivisions, and it's okay, then you need to stop there. So again, what I'm saying is, we need to know the plan, we need to know the entire plan, and we need to look at it in a cumulative way. And we need to have, those of us that live on those roads need to have input. And we need to see things before you make a decision.
Thank you very much. Just by show of hands, how many other folks would like to present comments? I'm just trying to figure out when we should try to fit a break in. 2. All right, I'm not trying to limit you. I'm just trying to get a sense whether we should break now or take these last 3 comments. And let's go ahead and try to do that, sir.
I'm Jerry Matarasso, 2494 Pheasant Run. I got the mailing, and that's how I know about the comprehensive change. We've lived there for over 36 years. We ran a business here in town, and we were always considered outsiders, even though we own commercial property. What I'm going to request, because I support the people who are sounding that they're against the comprehensive plan mostly, that before the meeting is ended, the chair requests a hand vote so you know how many people are here that are for or against the comprehensive plan.
Thank you for your comment. Yeah, I'll address that during our time to address comments. Saw one back here. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Craig Wills. I live at 406 Longs Peak Avenue. I'm terrible talking in public, so bear with me. I just want to make it clear and reiterate that people in town, we moved in town probably about 3 years ago, and we moved to this town for a reason. It's a small town. We're younger maybe than some of the people here, but I've lived here all of my life. I'm fourth generation. I've seen a lot of changes in Colorado, and a lot of them I don't like. I mean, it's become a sea of houses for the most part. Berthoud, when we moved here, still retains some of its small town appeal, certainly for us. I would hate to see that change. It's going to affect everything that you do in town. It's going to affect, if we do this, it will definitely affect the town. I've seen it. I've lived it in a different area in Colorado, and it is not good. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I guess one of my concerns is, why is the comprehensive committee that's supposedly being formed not formed yet to be looking at this? I think that should be formed first. I think it should be non-biased. I think we ought to have more members on that have other opinions, and every aspect needs to be looked at. It was just talked about the bald eagle. I'm also a biologist, and that's another thing that we're really going to lose. What we have here, what we have left here, is very valuable. I definitely value it. I think everybody here values it. We know that there's going to be growth to some degree, but only a very, very low growth in that area is going to maintain what most of us live here for. And again, I will reiterate, this will set a huge precedent for the future. And I think everybody needs to be very serious about that.
Thank you, Mr. Willis.
Saw another hand in the back, I think.
Are you taking a break to take other comments? I'm with the Haworth family. I'd like to have a comment later on in the meeting.
Now's probably the best time to do that. Is it to respond to questions and concerns that have been raised? Okay.
Yes. I'd like to finish listening.
Fair enough, and we'll do that after the break. Other comments from the public? Okay. Thank you very much for your time and effort and for coming tonight. We really appreciate it and need the input. It's very important to us. So thank you, and I know you took time away from families, and obviously this is an important issue to many folks in this room too. So we're now going to take just a, what do you think, 5-minute break? Is that, don't all go out and then come back in, although maybe you need some fresh air. Yes, sir.
One real quick
Sure.
suggestion.
Sure.
Since probably you're going to lose about half your crowds, wouldn't that hand signal be appropriate at this time?
Here's what I'm going to do with that, and I'll address that. And you're welcome to, it'll take a little bit longer to go through why I don't think that's appropriate tonight. But I'll go ahead and respond to that, and then we will take a break. Part of this is, and maybe, you know what, I was going to ask Tim maybe to respond in part, but let me just get it on the table. It's my understanding from the town staff that the town staff has embarked on the initial stages of updating the comprehensive plan. The first step in that process, and we can have more detailed discussion of this afterwards, was the establishment by the town staff of a committee to look at the growth management area boundary. That's the first precursor to the global amendment of the comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan applies to the entire Berthoud area, and so it's a big effort to revise that. And as Mr. Byers pointed out, he participated in it. It was a big community effort, and that's just starting. So I would expect that there will be lots of public discussion and public comment as that process goes forward. The town board and staff have suggested, on the basis of the petition for annexation, that this property be addressed now and not wait for that full plan. And so that's why we're dealing with it tonight. So, hold on.
That was what my suggestion was that way at least you know what the crowd's intent was on this particular issue to the planning committee.
I understand,
tonight.
but the question was, should we, by a show of hands, ask who supports the comprehensive plan? And that's not a fair question. Well, I think it's clear, but I'm happy to do that. By show of hands, raise your hand if you oppose the items that are before us this evening.
All of them?
Okay. All right. Thank you for that input. At this point, we're now going to take a break. So give us 10 minutes and we'll reconvene. Thank you. Okay, let's get going again. We're back in our public hearing concerning the Haworth property. We took a 10-minute break or so. It's our October 7th, 2013 special meeting of the Town of Berthoud Planning and Zoning Commission. Before we took our break, we took public comment, and now I'll ask Mr. Caters to address for his thoughts on responses to comment that we received. I'm going to let you know right in advance, Mr. Caters will not address everything that was brought up today. We just don't have the time to do that. We've heard that, and we were not going to engage in back and forth. We've heard from you. Now it's the town staff's turn, and then there'll be a closing opportunity for the applicants before the commissioners ask questions. So, Tim, I don't know if you have an organized way that you'd like to go through this. If you just want to jump in. Maybe just to start you off, I heard some questions about fiscal benefits to the town of development on this property. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the obvious one is you do get property tax off of property that's in the community, and after that, the part of the reason for residential development in this country essentially is, other than the fact that folks need a home to live in, some of the comments that came in the written stuff and the one today also talked about, geez, it'd be great. The one today was sort of like, it'd be great if we had a Costco or more shops, that kind of stuff here, so it'd be easier to shop in Berthoud. And the reason communities approve residential development is because to get those kinds of amenities, a commercial development in a community, they look in whatever their radius is, and they see, well, you either have enough people or you don't. And so communities across the country are put in a in a pattern where they're essentially pushed towards that residential development so that they can get the commercial development that follows behind. So this particular, if 80 homes show up on this property, well, that won't drive a new Safeway at the intersection, or a Walgreens down by the Main Street Car Care. That won't be probably even enough to drive additional commercial development, but it all adds up. That's sort of the point of developing a community, so that you can get to that point and be more self-sustaining. The general fund of this community is funded about 30% on sales tax. So when you have the set of shops that we have, that's what you're looking at. It's funding about 30% of the operations of the town of Berthoud. So property tax is one. The wastewater system, this would bring more customers on that. They're 60 feet from the estates at Matthews Farm property, which has public sewer service. They're about a little further away from what the town calls the Alpha Line. It's a large line that was put in by a developer at the northwest corner of the intersection of 287 and County Road 8. So they'd be on our wastewater system, helping bring revenue to that facility. We have master meter agreements with Little Thompson and other portions of the community where those areas receive a bill from the town of Berthoud. We don't know if there will be one here. We do have an IGA with that, with the water district, and it's pretty much due for renewal here fairly soon, or to look at that IGA. So we don't know what will come of that project. That's yet to begin. So economically, it helps. It helps bring the community to that point, to that threshold, where you can get those other economic benefits. I wouldn't mind talking about the comprehensive plan process a tiny bit anyway.
Please.
At this stage, since that came up quite a bit. Back in, I want to say about March, I looked earlier today, and I'll guess that March 2nd might have been the first meeting of the advisory committee on an update to the comprehensive plan. Their charge was to take the 2007 plan that we have right now and update it. Look at I chimed in with my list of how many goals and objectives we had earlier, and I can reach down and grab that again. But their charge was to look at that approval from 2007 and see if it's still accurate. As a community, does the town still want the 152 objectives or whatever were listed that I mentioned earlier? And so the process there is that this committee of 9 people, there are 7 residents from in Berthoud and 2 residents who live west of County Road 19 on the committee, and they met from March through early June. Carol Brewer is the chair of that committee. Dick's a member of that committee as well, and a gentleman right behind me is a member of that committee. So I've got at least 3 of them here in the room, and they met through June, and we had a bit of a hiccup through the summer. We haven't really met since early to mid-June as a committee, and they're starting again. Carol can speak to it. The first draft of a portion of what the committee would like to maybe see for a comp plan, if she chooses. And so essentially the committee is back doing its work at this time. At that point, when the committee would get done with looking at this update of 2007, then we enter into and those meetings have been in the paper, they've been on the website, they're all publicly noticed. And so once the committee gets done, then that and they're happy with their product or with their review, then it's time for it to leave the committee, and they go, great, here's a thanks for, and we say thank you to these 9 people for working on what they think is the right thing for the community to move forward as a comp plan. And then it shifts, and we would move into the not only the public aspect of it in talking with neighbors both east and west, sort of anything that would get a color at least on this map. We would have on that map in the middle that would go into a public and open meeting process. It'd also go through a process here at the Planning Commission. We don't know what the product from the committee will be, and we don't know what the Planning Commission will think of that product when it comes here. So that has all yet to start. Once the Planning Commission would work through the product that is given to you by the committee, then it would shift to the town board for that same work. So there's an inordinate maybe amount of process yet to come on a comp plan. And I see your committee chair.
If you wanted to add anything to that, you don't need to. I think that was a good summary.
I'll just add very briefly, this committee is not writing a new comp plan. It is not writing a new comp plan. What we are doing is what Tim said. We're taking a look at the 2007 plan. There are a lot of goals and objectives in there. Some of them were accomplished. We're trying to figure out what those were and pat ourselves on the back and say good job and look at the goals and objectives that are still there. The planning committee is co-chaired by myself and Carol Patterson. There are 2 members on that committee that represent, one for Larimer County residents, one for Weld County. The composition includes business owners, residents, trustees, members of other committees. We've met 6 or 8 times. As Tim said, the process was parked over the summer. You know how summer is. It's hard to, everybody's out of town. But our work has resumed as of the last week of September, and we're working hard. We want this to be ready for public input and comment before the end of the year. So that's where we are. And people have come to those meetings. Every single one of them has been open, and we hope that people will continue to come. Maybe we need to figure out a better way to get the word out than the town website and the newspaper. I don't know what that mechanism is, but we'll work on that. I promise you as a chair. And I don't really know what else to say beyond that.
Thank you.
So hopefully that helps.
Tim, what else do you have?
Sure, I'll clarify zoning. The difference between the map in the middle, which is a preferred land use plan, and its range of allowed density, and the map on the right, which is the zoning map, which is law. Law is what drives the bus, and law, if they were annexed and zoned agriculture, is 1 unit per acre. Those lots actually have to be at least 1 acre lots. So when I gave my example of, well, you'd need roads inside of the property, and you'd need storm drainage areas, and you'd need possibly a park, plus currently there's still a almost 90-year-old gas line running through the property at a diagonal that you can't build on top of. And so those all take ground away from the 80. It doesn't, because the reason being the lot itself would have to be 1 acre at least in size. So there's no way on earth to get 80 homes on those 80 acres.
I heard a question about school impacts.
We refer everything we do to the school district all the time. They do not want any more schools in this town at this point. We continue to refer much larger projects and much larger developments than this. And they are not seeking additional land for any schools in Berthoud. They have not been in the time I have been here.
Another thing I had on my list is, when will there be a traffic engineering study, a traffic impact study?
I would have that at any real development of the property. Splitting off, at this point, splitting off is proposed in the minor subdivision. Probably at best there will be 1 more home on this property on the 5-acre piece.
So that would come
That's
forward.
10. That's 10 trips.
It would come forward when there's a proposal to.
Right. For anything of substance beyond something like that, yes.
And a town requirement is to include a traffic impact analysis.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Anything else that, Tim, you felt that you wanted to respond to?
I can probably just respond to other issues from the commission.
Okay. All right. We'll have some questions for you, I assume, in a bit. Now, I know that there was a gentleman who wanted to speak to the commission on behalf of the Haworth family one more time, and that'd be fine.
Fine. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Council. My name is Charles Haworth. I live at 108 West Front Street in Florence, Colorado. I also have an interest in the farm in question at 509 North County Road 19. I appreciate everybody coming forward and expressing their concerns. I've had some support, but mostly some opposition, which I understand there are just some misconceptions out there. A lot of things in this world, like anything with your household or anything, It's about intent. One person tonight has asked me, Chuck, what do you intend to do? We have been trying a lot of different ways to just be able to parcel out pieces of land so my brother can keep the homestead at 10 acres, and I can maybe buy 5 acres from the estate and build a home on that. All the other plans, all the other county plans and everything else, this is the only thing that we can get where I can get a house on the land I grew up on, and my brother can maintain the original homestead. So, I know that I could tell you about, we've been here, the Haworth family, for 112 years, 4 generations, 110 crops infused into the county of Larimer and the town of Berthoud. We have been good neighbors, we have been good landowners, but farming doesn't pay. And we do have a farmer family now who is farming the land. They have a long-term contract. Once again, our intent is just to be able to, once again, our intent is not to have a sea of houses. I've heard that term so many times tonight. A sea of roofs, a sea of houses, all this. That's not what we envision either. We envision one house on 10 acres, one house on 5 acres, and we want to continue to have our land farmed. But this is the only plan that we can come up with that is agreeable to where we can just take a piece of our homeland and be able to live on it. My father grew up, he was born in that house, he died in that house. I grew up on that land, I want to die on that land. You guys are not allowing me to do that. It's not right. It's not fair. John, Angela, we all grew up together. A lot of you people I recognize. I live far away from Berthoud now, but I want to come back. But everybody is against me. They're against my brother and my sisters. All we want to do is live where we grew up. We don't want anything. We don't want to see houses. We want to see Longs Peak too. But this is the only option we have been afforded. We have no other options. That's all it is.
There has to be another way that you can have your homeland.
Please.
There isn't.
Please, we need to continue with our orderly process, and if there are discussions you want to have after the meeting, that'd be fine. But
I've got it written down here. Presently, we are inhibited by the current zoning laws in our endeavor to be able to just parcel out a small piece of our own little homeland, our property. It's like we've never caused trouble in Berthoud. We all went to school here. All of our school years, our high school years, we have been viable citizens and proponents of the land. But farming just doesn't pay. We have the, like I said, the farm leased out. And if we don't pass this, I can't live on the land I grew up on. I know you don't care, most of you, but I do. And I endeavor and implore everyone here to just consider our request. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now it's time for questions that the commissioners may have or clarifications that you need from the town staff.
I have a question related to the petition. And first up, before I even ask my question, I want to thank everyone for your comments, for your input. This is a really hard process. I've spent many days going through every line of the materials that I have. It's a complicated process. So, you know, just bear with us. We're really trying hard to make sure we understand all of the details of this. So my first question is with the petition, since that's, in a way, where this starts tonight. And in particular, I'm confused a little bit about what I understand about the property as it is today and what I understand as what the intentions are. So right now we have about a little bit more than 85 acres of property. The petitioner has started through the rural land use planning process with the county, and that process, as I understand it, makes it impossible to divide that property into what you just described. You cannot peel off a 5-acre, a 10-acre, and then have the 66-acre parcel without putting the large parcel into conservation easement. I mean, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the details. Is that correct?
That the referral from Larimer County about a year ago did exactly that, yes. They wanted to do 3 lots, with the 4th lot being a rural, get the right words.
Well, from what I read on the
A residual
website,
lot, I'm
it's
sorry.
A residual lot.
Yes.
So this is where I'm confused, Tim. So they could actually have the 3 lots of the sizes they want and keep the residual lot in farming, right?
I think that was the application with the county.
Right. So that is possible. Okay. All right. So then with the petition, this issue of is it going to be developed, is it not, when might it be developed, who might develop it, that's all very much in the air. But the petition states in point 8, letter D, and this is all part of the statements about the status of the property, that the territory is urban or will be urbanized in the near future. I mean, obviously it's not urban now, but for the purposes of the town, what does near future mean? Because that's what's in the petition. So I'm just starting with the petition that they gave to the town. I want to understand what near future means.
I don't have a definition for near future. The language A through F in that part of the petition is part of the requirements from the state of Colorado that need to be alleged or stated in any annexation petition.
But can you see where I'm confused about this? Because they're saying we're not going to develop it, but the petition says it will be urbanized in the near future.
You can pick a date.
Okay. Well, it's not tomorrow probably, but at any rate, it's just part of the confusion in our discussion. So, all right, so we can't actually answer that question.
But the town has utility plans,
Turn on your mic, Scott.
utility plans that stretch.
Turn it on. Thank you.
The Alpha line, was developed for some of the future growth to the west. But, that crystal ball, I've been here 39 years and it hasn't developed.
Right, but I'm just trying to get at this specific pieces of this proposition, which seem to be causing such huge tension in our community, and that is tension around whether or not that residual 60 acres is going to be developed anytime soon. That's one of the pieces of friction.
The residual lot would have kept the 66 acres undeveloped for at least 40 years.
Right. And is that residual plot what's for sale, or what would become the residual lot? Is that the thing that's out there with the for sale sign?
You'll have to ask the applicants what they're selling.
Ms. Sorenson, would you come up, please?
Oops.
Okay, first of all, let me clarify, when we were going through the county, we could have the homestead. In order to have a legal buildable lot, going through the rural land use, we could have cut off the homestead, and then we could have a building lot for like an outbuilding, and then we could have another piece of property. and then the 67% of the land would be conservation easement, which somebody would have to maintain it, which would basically be us. And so then when we decided to go back and try the annexation again, that way we could have the homestead and we could have the 5-acre parcel that my other brother would be able to have, and then we could sell off the rest. And it doesn't mean that we're going to have a developer. It could be somebody that wants to buy the whole farm ground. But we're not proposing a subdivision. We're not.
Okay,
So does that clarify it?
All right, thank you very much. I have another question if nobody else does.
I have some, but go ahead.
See this slide. Okay, one of the other questions I have is, what are the other possibilities for the land use designation? Right now it's FA1, and I looked that up on the county website, and FA1 is a farming designation. There's a whole array of other designations this property could potentially have in terms of zoning. It seems to me like we really need to discuss these, and our due diligence about what's the most appropriate zoning should drive the process, and not necessarily the request that's in the petition. So we only got one possibility in the staff report, which was the petitioner's request, and I just want to understand what the other options are so that we can talk about those and
Sure.
make some sense of it.
In terms of zoning, we have transitional zoning is our most basic zone district. What that does, it's the brown colors over on this map over here. It's that light brown kind of colors right over there. Transitional zoning, I will not put it in your eye, sorry. The transitional zoning would be the sort of absolute lowest. What that allows is what's on the property today. Period. No change. Any change in anything that comes into town as a transitional zoning by town code, it makes you have to rezone. So if we zoned this property transitional today and he wanted to build a house, he would have to rezone. Okay? I've got some new commissioners. Are we clear with that? The next zoning category up is ag. The zoning that's before you tonight. That allows 1 unit per acre, and I mentioned earlier some of the other uses, farm stands, parks, open space, home occupations, that kind of thing, and 1 single-family home per acre. If I get beyond that, I start getting into our residential districts. Those get towards 6 units per acre. I could go on, but the density only gets more. So those are the zoning options we have in our town. I think when you were looking at FA1, you were looking at the county website and their zones.
Well, right. I was trying to understand what they actually have now, so that was why I went to the county website to look up what that meant.
Okay.
Well, I think I found that on the website, but everybody else probably didn't.
Tim, maybe I can ask a question here, and this is really, I guess, a process question, and it's one that I haven't been able to fully understand. And I know that there's been lots of discussion at the town board level about this, and maybe some at the committee that Carol's on. But I'm trying to understand why this this property and this comp plan amendment isn't part of the overall update to the comp plan that started in earlier this year and is planned to be, Carol said, hopefully.
You know, it's really hard to hear with people talking.
I've never fully understood from the town board standpoint or the town staff standpoint why this has been pulled out of that process, out of the growth management area boundary consideration of that committee, and also out of the comp plan amendment process. We've got those things ongoing. Why is this not part of that broader process?
The town made a decision to continue to conduct the business of the town as it came before it during this process, and not stop and wait for the comp plan committee to do its work, for the planning commission to do its work, for the town board to do its work and get to the end. So the town made a conscious decision. I believe in May I would have mentioned that at our planning commission meeting, and I certainly have mentioned it more than once and with the town board, that, guys, you have a choice. You can, in effect, stop taking applications for as long as this takes, 6 months, a year, 2 years, it doesn't, whatever that time frame is, or you can continue to do the business of the town as it comes before you. They made a choice to continue to do the business of the town.
And that was a decision by the town board, right? Okay. Is there some level of urgency to this request on behalf of the applicant?
I'll let them answer whether or not there is urgency.
Okay. All right. That's one I can understand.
We're over 60 or 60. I'm going to retire in a couple of years. That's what I wanted to build there. And my brother, he's ready to retire, even though he's younger than me. But it's basically because, of the age factor. Some of us have health issues. So.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
When the applicant submitted their application, did they request the low-density residential designation, or were they requesting a different designation, very low, for instance, which people have advocated for?
I think they'd originally thought about a higher density than what's before us tonight. And as staff, we talk with every applicant about their options. No different than we're talking about options or talking about background here tonight. So, sure, we talk about what options are available. There's this before them.
You said they talked about a higher density and came down to this one.
Yes.
But was it ever discussed, the very low density? If there's no intention to subdivide at this time or make a subdivision, is that something that was discussed as an option?
It would have been part of the discussion. We've got very low, and we've got, I think it's just low over there. And when the zoning was zoning at 1 per acre, it's a match for low density.
Oh, it is.
There is no density total for the very low. It's undefined.
Oh, okay.
On our comp plan.
Okay.
So I can't tell you what that means, what very low density residential is.
Would that be up to the applicant to decide?
They can suggest, sure.
They can suggest, but it's up to the town to decide.
Well, I mean, they request the decisions happen here and at the town board.
Okay.
But it's not a zoning category.
Right.
Zoning category, I mean, in terms of low zoning, we really have a town two choices for zoning the property. That matches sort of the intent of this project, transition or ag.
Right. But I think you mentioned that Matthews Farm was very low density, and how?
We do have a third option. We have what's called a planned unit development overlay, a PUD overlay. The rose-colored areas on those maps are a PUD. Through the development code process, we've really downplayed the ability or what's allowed in PUD zoning. The town has shifted gears and is trying to get more towards what's called straight zoning or normal zone districts, and not have the PUD overlays or PUD zoning itself.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Tim, if the property, I know that it doesn't sound like that's the intent, but stranger things have happened, that it would sell and become developed quickly. If that were to happen, would the water supply for the new homes on the property it would be supplied by the Little Thompson Water District, right?
Today, yes.
Okay. And wastewater wastewater treatment would be provided by the town?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Is there a variance process to to make it possible to have two houses built on this property instead of what seems to be the one house limit, so that every brother or sister can have their house without having these issues of breaking off the large piece that could then be subdivided? I don't know the answer to this. I don't know if there's a variance process in the county, or if there's a variance process where this very low or this transitional zoning could allow one more house to be built.
Couldn't finance it.
Well, I mean, that would be their issue. I want to know the answer about the variance process.
It wouldn't be a variance in that case. Probably the best, we've never done one of these, the best coming from transition would probably be a PUD overlay on top of transitional zoning that said 2 houses.
And so is that impossible? I just want to understand.
I don't know. I got to think about it a little bit. I haven't thought about an option like that. I can't give you a clean answer right here.
Okay. I have one other question. In looking over the staff report really carefully, there was a list of all, or not of all, but at least the ways that the annexation proposal aligned with the 2007 comp plan were highlighted. But I thought it was surprisingly silent on all the ways that it might be out of alignment with the comp plan. And yes, I know there's 300 goals and objectives. Believe me, I'm very familiar with all of them. Well, maybe not all of them, but many of them. And so I thought that there may be aspects of the 2007 comp plan that are out of alignment with this annexation idea. I just wonder why it was so silent on that. I felt like it might have helped me understand this better if I had a better sense of both the positive and negative alignments of the proposal with the 2007 comp plan.
Mm-hmm. The majority of the elements in the comp plan deal with things that aren't in question right now with this application. When they talk about gateways and we talk about adequate public facilities upon development, and we talk about the look and feel of the community, we don't have that development proposal in front of us. So I'll try to do better on staff reports. I guess would be I can dig out the comp plan and we can start reading it, would be my other.
Did. But it just, I don't know, that seemed like a little bit of a gap in my, as I was trying to analyze this.
Other questions?
Tim, discussing what's before us relative to this annexation and what we're actually looking at before us, are there costs that can be associated at this point, that the town would have to be responsible for, that we don't already work through the county.
Could you bring it back down, please?
Sure. So for instance, how we share time with the county on roads and road coverage, and the fact that the police cover Matthews Farm and that area of 119 and all that, or County Road 19. So are there thoughts that you've got relative to what we're looking at here today on what the town is going to look at as far as costs?
Not the number. I don't have the number. I have talked to Jerry, our Public Works Director, in the past, more on the Jaskowski annexation rather than this one. And late today I was looking for that maintenance number per mile. I didn't find it, and we were past 5. I couldn't get to Jerry for that number. But he's Public Works crew has been fine. I asked them, we talked to them when things like the Jaskowski annexation and others come before us, and he goes, no, we're fine, we'll get it.
But just to take that a step further, I mean, isn't that typical to compare the anticipated costs with the anticipated financial benefits to kind of figure out whether this is a good deal?
Sure, generally on larger projects.
It's difficult to hear
It's
up
really
here, and
hard
it's
to
difficult
hear.
to hear in the room. So we were all respectful when folks here were talking at the podium, and I'd ask you for the same consideration. Thank you.
Sure, larger projects will run a fiscal, a 300-acre project, something like that, or the bigger projects where there's going to be a lot of development, the 900 houses or the 800 houses, that sort of thing. We do have applicants run a financial analysis for that, for projects like that. At this point, this was such 80 homes is absorbable in this community.
Well, I want to follow up on that point too, because the code requires an economic impact analysis, and I'm biased as a scientist. I like data. I want to see a chart. I want to see a table. It seems like there would be a way to do some forecasting of the cost of maybe widening roads, or what the police driving back and forth out there. It just seems like it's possible to do some sort of forecasting and understand what the error around those forecasts are. And it's just, I can't wrap my brain around the notion that there's absolutely no economic impact of this annexation.
Residential homes don't cover the cost of services in this country.
I know.
Your home doesn't. If you pay a dollar in property tax at your home, it probably costs the town about $1.20.
So we can
to take care of your.
Calculate
sure,
that.
I can. Sure, we can. It's 80 times $1.20 and 80 times $1. But that's a nationwide number. I've got the results of 150 different studies that sort of boil down to about that.
But the town of Berthoud Police thought there would be zero cost of providing service out there. The wastewater treatment plant, the road maintenance, everybody thought there would just be zero cost of. That's just what I'm trying to understand better.
No, it's probably the $1.20 expense for $1 in revenue, community-wide, for across all departments.
And that's one of the points of tension in our discussion, and I think if we could just have a little more clarity on that, it might reduce that tension.
Tim?
It's just not obvious that it's a good financial deal for the town. And a deal's the wrong word, but the financial outcome would be favorable to the town.
It's in that greater picture. It's getting that level up to a point where you can get the sales tax revenue.
That's one benefit, but to just have that better cost-benefit analysis, I felt was just wasn't here to help me understand the full implications of this annexation.
We hijacked the question anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
All right.
To their point, when they do move forward with any kind of site plan or property development, they're required to do the traffic analysis, the road studies, the analysis for wastewater, water, any deals with Little Thompson.
Mhm.
All of that's part of a fiscal analysis that would come before Planning Commission and the town board.
Yes.
Thank you, Jan.
Well, that's absolutely true, but we are potentially bringing this into the town, and, you know, at least we have to have some discussion around what the possible impacts are.
As I understand it, there's two things that we're supposed to decide upon tonight. Is that these people have come to us asking us to be annexed into the town of Berthoud, right? That's the one thing. They've come to us and asked us. After that, we send a recommendation, what we decide, to go up to the town board level. The other thing that we're deciding upon is what to zone it at this point in time, and also send that recommendation up to the town board. And have the town board also discuss that. As with any development that comes into town, with all the impact studies and impact fees that we're doing studies on right now to bring them up to date, that's where that discussion takes place. At this point in time, do you want to get the Planning Commission involved in the fiscal responsibility of the town?
Well, I got out the code today.
Well, good for you.
Well, I did, because that's part of what we're supposed to do. And one of the things that we're supposed to do is to review 7 points and to decide if the information in those 7 points is sufficient for us to assess the impacts. I mean, it calls for an economic impact analysis. It calls for an impact analysis. And I personally am very concerned that our impact report does not adequately address these 7 points. That's
So
part of what
you
we're
don't
supposed
believe
to do
what
tonight.
the police department told you?
What I don't understand, I don't know what the police department.
You just said they said it was zero cost.
Well, that's what we have here. That there's
You don't
no.
believe it.
Tim, I don't. Dick, I don't have any data. I'd like to see the table. But what I'm concerned about is that there are a number of elements that are supposed to be in the impact report, and I really don't want to get into an argumentative debate. But there are things like the code around annexation requires an analysis of the compatibility or conflict, those are the words in our code, with adjacent land uses as well as the mitigation proposed to address them. I can't find that in here, so it makes it hard for me to analyze this annexation request. The current land use designation out there is FA1, which I went and looked up to understand better what it was. I assume that's pretty much the same land use designation on the neighboring properties. I don't know that for sure. I'm making an assumption there. And that the minimum lot sizes for that designation are 2.3 acres and only one principal building is allowed plus the accessory farm buildings. So it's hard for me to evaluate the extent of compatibility of this annexation proposal if there's not enough information presented to address whether it really is compatible with what's out there. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Can I also add that if this is a decision that's going to be setting some sort of precedent, it would be nice to have those numbers, know whether it's fiscally prudent, because the growth management area is larger.
I would just add, I don't think this is any different than any other annexation, so I don't know that this is establishing any sort of different precedent than we already have. I mean, this is the process that we go through, and I don't think this one is, at least since I've been up here, is being treated differently than other annexations.
Except that it's beyond the original growth management area boundary, which
Right.
makes it,
We've had annexations before us where we were required, to, if the town decided to annex the property, the comp plan also had to be amended. So we've done that too.
okay.
A little bit different that this is coming forward while that amendment process is out there. That's one of the big differences, I think.
Okay.
Other questions?
Tim, in your staff report, you go over the 7 points that Carol mentioned, point by point. And I noticed there's not numbers that she's requesting next to them, but you lay out the rationale for why it's essentially not negatively impacting the town. Is that correct?
Those are the points on amending the comprehensive plan. Those in my staff report. Pardon?
And that's different than the standards that Carol was.
Yes. Yeah.
Other questions, discussion?
Are we still in hearing?
If not, we're probably close to having to consider a motion. Before we get there, though, Tim, what's the next step with respect to these items before the town board? Is there a date for a hearing that's been established?
The 22nd is when the town board considers the comprehensive plan amendment, annexation, and zoning of the property. At this stage in the process, this minor subdivision would not be before the town board. It doesn't need to be. So instead of 4 agenda items, they have 3.
Okay.
On the 22nd.
And just to remind everyone, the items that are before us are on page 7 of the staff report. The last one that Tim mentioned is the minor subdivision of the property, which would be affected through the resolution that was included in the staff report. The other items are recommendations to the town board.
And that resolution has a number of conditions listed on it that the town board has to take actions on the comprehensive plan, on annexation, on zoning. Yeah. And so your resolution has a list of conditions.
And primarily, the subdivision won't take effect until
unless
the property is annexed.
those occur, right?
All right. Any further discussion?
I would move that we accept staff recommendation and make recommendation to the Board of Trustees that the approval of the amendment to the comprehensive plan and preferred land use plan reflect the low-density residential land use on the Haworth Estate property based on the following findings of fact. A, the existence of comprehensive plan and or any related element thereof are in need of the proposed amendment. The proposed amendment is compatible with the surrounding area and the goals and policies of the plan. C, the proposed amendment will have no major negative impacts on transportation, services, and facilities. D, the proposed amendment will have minimum effect on the service provisions, including adequacy and or the availability of urban facilities and services, and is compatible with the existing planned service provisions. E, the proposed amendment, if for any area that is outside the town's current municipal boundaries, is consistent with the town's ability to annex the property. F, strict adherence to the plan would result in a situation neither intended nor in keeping with other key elements of the policies of the plan. And G, the proposed plan amendment will promote the public welfare and will be consistent in the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan and the elements thereof.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
Yeah. I think on point B that states the proposed amendment is compatible with the surrounding area and the goals and the policies of the plan, meaning the comp plan. I don't think we know if it's compatible with the surrounding area, and the comp plan, the extent to which it's in alignment with the comp plan has not been thoroughly addressed. On point C, no major impacts on transportation services and facilities. We don't know this because there's no analysis presented. On D, the proposed amendment will have minimal effect on service provision and so on. We don't know this. The information was not adequate to judge this. On point F, strict adherence to the plan would result in a situation neither intended nor in keeping with other key elements and policies of the plan. We don't have a complete analysis of this. Point G, the proposed plan amendment will promote the public welfare and will be consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. We have not got a thorough analysis of this.
Thank you, Carol. Any other discussion or comments? Yeah, sure.
If the situation were that we needed more information, so that the commissioners would feel satisfied that they're in agreement with all those conditions in the resolution, what does that process look like?
At times in the past, when that's been the case, and there'd been a motion to table an item for a future meeting while that information was being developed. So there is that process. At this point, though, we've got a motion and a second, and we've had our discussion of it. Any other comments on the specific motion?
And staff can add an amendment or amend any of the information as it goes to the town board, so they could move that forward if they felt necessary.
Sue, will you pull the commission on that motion?
Christine Solentano? Of course. No, I'm kidding, because you called me first. I abstain.
Dick Shepherd?
Yes.
Bill Gilmore?
Yes.
Chris Thorne?
No.
Carol Brewer?
No.
Scott Benza?
Yes.
Jan Dowker?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries by a 4-2 vote. Do we have a motion on the next item in our staff report?
I would move that we accept staff's recommendation, and I would move to recommend to the Board of Trustees the annexation of the Haworth Estates first and second annexations.
Second. Is there discussion of that motion? Okay. Whenever you're ready, Sue.
Dick Shepherd?
Yes.
Chris Thorne?
No.
Jan Dowker?
Yes.
Bill Gilmore?
Yes.
Carol Brewer?
No.
Scott Benza?
Yes.
Christine Solentano?
No.
Okay, that motion also carries by a 4-3 vote. 2 more items. Stay with us. We're getting there.
I would move to recommend to the Board of Trustees that the zoning of the Haworth Estates property to AG, agriculture.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Go ahead, Sue, please.
Carol Brewer?
No.
Chris Thorne?
No.
Jan Dowker?
Yes.
Dick Shepherd?
Yes.
Bill Gilmore?
Yes.
Scott Benza?
Yes.
Christine Solentano? No.
That motion passes 4-3. Last item.
I would move that we accept staff's recommendation and action on number 4, and would move to approve resolution 2-13.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Scott Benza?
Yes.
Chris Thorne?
No.
Jan Dowker?
Yes.
Christine Solentano? No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
That motion also carries 4-3. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. This was a long meeting. We appreciate your input and ask you to continue to follow this with the town board. So thanks again. And I'd also ask you to continue any discussions outside. We've got a whole nother agenda item to deal with tonight. So thank you.
So it happens it's an annexation. You might just want to stay.
Me too.
I'm going to bail.
Yeah, drive safely.
You don't want to stay around? Good to see you. You don't think the next one's going to be just as important?
Maybe not. Turn off the clock.
Let's get back to it. Would you pass that down to Tim? To Tim? Sue, are you ready to keep going? We should power through, right?
I just look forward to seeing 528th Avenue.
Okay, we didn't actually take a formal break. We were resting. Want to thank the folks here on the Pro Swing Park Annexation and Zoning for sitting through our earlier process. And sorry that it took so long. Actually ended sooner than was estimated, so not really a silver lining, I don't think.
What was the estimate?
I heard midnight at one point. So now we're going to hear the sixth item on our agenda, which is recommendation to the town board on an annexation and a public hearing and recommendation of the zoning of property to C2. The property is identified in the staff report as Pro Swing Park. It's property that's located on the north end of First Street, just south of 285. Sorry, 287. I had a mosquito buzzing around me. We will follow the same process for this annexation that we followed in the prior one. We'll first hear from our town staff, and then we'll have an opportunity for the applicant to address the commission, and then we'll accept public comment. Take it away, Mr. Caters.
Sorry. Do you want to do the open one hearing and just talk it through?
Let's go ahead and do that. So at this point, we will open the public hearing. The hearing is required for the recommendation on zoning, but at the same time, we'll hear and discuss the annexation of the property, for which the formality of a public hearing isn't necessary, but it'll allow some efficiency here.
Okay. Thank you. This is the application to annex 9.32 acres of land into the town. I will shift to the location map just so we all know where it is. It's outlined in red on the screen behind me, and it's basically the north end of 1st Street here in town, and at the curve of 287. It's a little bit of 8+ acres of private property, and then includes, then the annexation itself includes right-of-way. So I will shift back to a staff report. The proposed land uses on the property include baseball and softball training facilities with support buildings, parking, and related improvements. Access is proposed to be along an extension of Clayton Place, which is across the Champion Homes property. I'll switch back to my image, and I don't know that I have much of Champion Homes property on here. I don't. But essentially where you see, there we go, where you see this line heading south, I don't have much of a, the Excel substation is where my cursor is right now, squiggling around. And access would be to this property once developed along Clayton Place, which is now a private road, but would be a public right-of-way at that point in time.
Tim, I couldn't see your cursor. Where?
It's a goofy there. Over there, it's an arrow.
Okay,
and this doesn't work on that screen. It dies on that screen.
Be from here down the Champion property.
Okay, so it'd be off 1st Street and then onto, yeah. You turn off 1st Street.
It would be
Turn off at 10. It's off at 10.
up at Tanny.
Okay, I gotcha.
Oh,
gotcha.
I can pull up a Google Earth and we can look at it that way. What we have before us is annexation and recommendation on annexation and a recommendation on zoning for this property. And what we don't have before us is a site plan that would install improvements and deal with water, sewer, and the impacts thereof of the operation itself. I do have on the second page of my staff report, applicant has provided a narrative on the proposal if it were annexed and developed. 5 practice fields, mainly daylight use, especially here at the beginning for a few years. Fall and winter months, indoors. Number of persons on the site, about 4 to 6 teams with 10 to 12 persons per team. And so a lot of the impacts that we'll really see and we'll really review on this project will come at that site plan kind of level where we nail that down. This sheet of my staff report is to give us an idea of what we're being asked to consider in the annexation and zoning. They're looking at lighting in the fields later, a couple years down the road. In terms of the comp plan, and I will probably pull up a map. Get that out of the way. I need to shift around, and I've been trying to avoid doing my entire computer on screen. Let's drag the comp plan up. This property is, again, the cursor turns into the small crosshairs here, but this, right where the dark line of First Street and the line of 287 meet, is one of these activity nodes in the current comp plan. And so this is listed as an activity node on the comp plan, and we do have. I'll slide over if I can get this cursor to do its job. Some of the activity nodes on the comp plan I've got. We're on the side of the screen now. The high intensity activity node or a downtown activity node, regional crossroad. This particular location has the image, but it doesn't really have the leading line that heads right to it. So it looks like this application does conform with the comprehensive plan, as it is both zoned, or as it's identified, as a high-density mixed use on the preferred land use plan and highlighted as an activity node. The high-density mixed use land use on our comprehensive plan is the overall definition that includes, it's sort of our busiest or most active definition on the comp plan. And when all of the business, industry, commercial, those types of uses all fall under that designation. We don't have a commercial designation by itself on the comp plan or an industrial designation. So my assumption in terms of the comp plan is that active uses were contemplated at this location at the time of the plan. In terms of the annexation itself, this annexation is in series, like the last one we looked at. I'll walk through those maps a little bit because they are more complex than the last set. See, that's just my cover sheet. I'll get away from that. We don't need that. Sheet 2 of the annexation map set. Let's drop her down to 75%. Sorry, guys. What this first annexation in serial is just the width of the right-of-way, the 60-foot right-of-way of First Street. It is a process that's contemplated by the Colorado Revised Statutes where contiguity is built in a series of annexations. So that is annexation 1. I'll slide directly to the right. Then annexation number 2 builds upon annexation number 1 and gets an additional length of contiguity. In effect, annexation 1 in series becomes part of the town of Berthoud, then annexation 2 in series. I need to drop that map off and go to annexation number 3. I won't go too big on that. Annexation 3 builds off of 2 to take in the rest of the property. The annexations do meet the contiguity requirements of the state. In terms of zoning, I'll shift back to my staff report. They're requesting zoning of C2. That's our heaviest. Our C1 zoning is essentially designed for Mountain Avenue. It's sort of that neighborhood zone district. And so that district does not support the kinds of uses that are proposed on the property. And so in working with the applicants, they've asked for C2 zoning, general commercial zoning. They have large open uses, and then the commercial nature of the facility is really the best match we have in our current zoning set of zoning regulations. Those are some of the permitted land use categories. The schools that include technical training. This is a training facility, but then commercial and retail businesses. We do have a couple of corrections to make on the annexation maps, some misspellings and some minor edits. That will be done before we get to the town board on this project. We've gotten 2 responses on this annexation. Thomas Noonan, he's the residence that's adjacent to the property, and I believe he's in the room tonight. I have attached his letter to you in your staff report. And then the Little Thompson Water District was the other response that we got, and that just that this district is also in the Little Thompson service area. Excuse me. So what we have before us is annexation request and zoning request on the property. Then at that point, should this be annexed and zoned, this would come before the town as a site plan application later to look at the actual development of the property, construction of access, the utility improvements, stormwater drainage, parking, lighting, location and appearance of buildings. So the concept plan, and I'll shift to that here in just a second maybe, and then the applicants actually have a small presentation I have on this. They gave me on a thumb drive here. But those details come with a proposal for the real development of the property. I'll get the concept map up. There's the, make sure it's early up on the screen. The proposal itself, or the concept here at annexation, anyway, the concept for the property. There would be no regular access at First Street. That's just, would be a terrible place to have a entrance into the property coming off of that curve. So parking is right now gathered up on the eastern side of the property, the indoor practice facility up there, a smaller office facility over here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields of varying sizes. You can see here this would be the access from Clayton coming down at the south. I believe at that point, any questions for me? Or the applicant could talk as well, speak as well.
We'll let you take a break. I've done a lot of talking tonight. Is there someone who'd like to speak on behalf of the applicant?
Want this up? Okay. Let me get to, and if you want,
Good evening.
if you want me to hit, you can just tell me.
So you hit it. I'm Deanne Fredrickson. I'm a land planner, landscape architect. My office is in Loveland at 1269 Cleveland Avenue. We're pleased to introduce you to Pro Swing Hitting and provide you with information regarding their plans to come to the town of Berthoud. Next slide. Pro Swing Hitting is a privately owned business that provides professional swing lessons, baseball and softball training to all ages. Steve Hazlitt, owner and instructor, played professional baseball for 8 years after a highly successful high school and college school career. They currently have a facility located in Longmont, Colorado. They would be serving people all over northern Colorado would come to Berthoud for their facility. The site is approximately, like Tim said, is approximately 9.3 acres. Next slide, sorry. Located on the north side of Berthoud, just south of State Highway 287. The Handy Ditch borders the property on the west side. A public service substation and county farmland are on the south side. There's a residential property situated on the east side of the property, and the site will be accessed from the south side via Clayton Place. Next slide. This is an illustrative concept plan that we're providing as a courtesy to demonstrate how the property will be used. This is the concept that we've been working with and evaluating. We have not yet submitted it for a formal application, but we felt like it was important to allow you to see how we plan to use the property. The property is kind of an odd shape, and so it's hard. It's not only is it hard to do any commercial development per se there, this is actually a really ideal place for this use. As noted before, well, when we do our site plan application, we'll be doing grading and drainage, and the site will be carefully engineered at the time of that review. And to answer one of Mr. Noonan's questions is we could actually improve the grading and drainage of the area with that site. The site will be accessed from the south. The east access will be emergency access only. There are 4 practice fields that are generally low-growth pasture grasses, crusher-fine pathways, and the gravel driveways and parking. The only concrete planned will be to provide for handicap access between the parking lot and the 2 buildings. The larger building is planned to be about 9,600 square feet in size. It's a metal building that's fairly agricultural in character, at least as far as we are starting down that path has shown us. It will be used for indoor practice and training. It'll be less than 30 feet in height. The smaller building is about 1,500 square feet in size and will be used for offices, storage, and restrooms. The building is expected to be less than 20 feet in height. Actually, it's probably less than 15 feet in height. The other facilities on the sites are bullpens and batting cages. Next slide. This is the comprehensive plan, again, as Tim has shown you. The C2 zoning is requested for the annexation. You can see the site in relationship to the surrounding areas. C2 allows for general commercial uses, including gas stations, hotels, kennels, and a variety of commercial and retail uses. But like I said, this facility is really pretty ideal for this site. Ball fields are used by right, and they offer the least impacts to the adjacent properties. Thank you for this opportunity to present this project. We're open to any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. We may have some questions in a bit. At this point, we'll take comments from the public on this annexation request. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission? Yes, sir.
My name's Thomas Noonan. I live at the property you saw. The little residence right there. I have no problem with the annexation of this property. It's their call. They can do what they want to do with it. I do have a problem with the zoning. The reason being is that what they propose here, while they can say it's good for the community, it's not good for me as a neighbor. They have a road, a projected road that's going to be next to my western boundary. It's gravel. That's going to be dust. I'm going to have car noise back there. I'm going to have headlights when they come down this road shining into my property. They want parking right next to my northern property line. That's not good for me. This is residential. This was agricultural. So now they want to turn it into commercial property. The hours of operation during the summertime, I could have almost 200 people next door to me. It's going to be unlivable there. I don't think any one of you guys would want this. I'm going to have air pollution from the noise from the cars, from the noise again, light pollution from the cars, dust on these roads. They want all this parking to be gravel. They want all this to be gravel. The wind where I live blows from the northwest. I get all that crap to me. They tried to pack all their ball fields as close up to my property line as they could get it, except for a 20-foot driveway. What I'm trying to say is I'd like to have the town, if they're going to have this happen, to have a little bit of control how they are going to, it's going to be a profound effect on my life with my property. And I'd like them to have some control. They've said possible light pollution in my yard. I'm going to lose my western view, as they're probably going to have those big tall fences up there to keep balls out of my backyard. So, as I said, annexation, I have no problem with, but I'm concerned about the C2 with no control from the town for my way of life that I've had there for almost 14 years. And I just ask for your consideration of that.
Thank you, Mr. Noonan. Tim, do you have any response, or we'll let the applicants respond to Mr. Noonan's comments? Maybe it's best if the applicant does initially.
I so understand your concerns, Mr. Noonan. It's hard when you move into a residential property and there's commercial property in the comprehensive plan right next door. And this property could actually have a building that's 50 feet high. Now, the probability of that happening is very slim. This developer wants to be a really good neighbor. They want to be in Berthoud. They want to be a good neighbor. We have not submitted a site plan yet. The reason is we want to work with Mr. Noonan about putting in landscape buffers or fencing or whatever it takes in order. We can't. It's hard. I don't want to promise anything at this point because we really we haven't submitted a site plan yet. But that's not to say that these people are not willing to work with Mr. Noonan in this regard. And so there's a lot of health, safety, and welfare issues that have been presented here that, of course, will be addressed. They're addressed in every project that we do. Dust mitigation, noise mitigation, light mitigation, traffic mitigation. All of those things are things that are addressed in a site plan review process, and there's codes in place for a good reason. And so I just wanted to say to Mr. Noonan and to this group that these people are good people for Berthoud. It's a great use. They're a great company, and they definitely want to work with the neighbor in terms of working these things out with him. Are we gonna block the view? Maybe. I don't know. But a 50-foot building would. And a park is really not a bad neighbor as far as I can tell. So though I understand the number of people that could be there at a certain amount of time, I honestly believe that we can mitigate as much as we can those impacts.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll get back to you. Mr. Caters, anything else to add to that? Can you talk to us about what would happen at the site plan process? Is that where fencing would be looked at, impact of parking, whether alternatives to gravel roads whether asphalt makes some sense or not? I mean, is that where that would occur?
Yes. The way to think about site plan review is it's everything. It truly is. It's from the sign, it's the landscaping, it's the irrigation of that landscaping, it's the access, it's where the parking lot is, what the fence looks like, what the building looks like. So the way to think about site plan is, yes, everything.
And that's not an administrative process, right? Would that come back before us?
I don't know that it will come back before you. It may well be an administrative process. I'll check in 2 seconds. I think it is administrative. Yeah, it is.
Tim, can you, I guess, maybe expand upon the changing, I guess, of the private right-of-way access to this to a public right-of-way access? And, after looking at this and driving that property and stuff, you see how it's gotten very kind of cut off from with the 287 project and that access. But Clayton has been a private for forever, so now we would be taking over that responsibility of that road. And I guess, is that incumbent upon us, and then bringing those improvements up to where they're street or public street standards? What responsibility and whose responsibility of the project?
The town's working with Intermill, with Intermill Surveying. Had a brain event right now to draw up that right-of-way and get that. It's a very complex access between all the properties coming up from Tanny to get to this property across the front of Champion. Then you get to an Excel easement to get to their substation. So the town's working with Intermill and Rob to finalize that. I would expect at least to see those drawings later this week in terms of access. But no, as far as I know, my understanding is that the town would not be bringing that road up to public right-of-way standard.
The town would not be?
Would not be, yes, correct.
I cut off the public comment portion because I only saw Mr. Noonan out there. The rest of these guys look like ball players. But is anyone else, is there any more public comment from the public? Mike, I'll get right to you. 1 second. Mr. Noonan, here's, unless you want to wait, I wanted to give you another shot. Okay. All right, Mr. Hart.
Mike Hart, Town Administrator. I'd like to tell the Planning Commission on behalf of the applicants that we've worked with these guys for over a year. It's an economic development project that we worked on, and there was another group, a basketball group that we worked with at the same time. They kind of came in together, and we're still kind of working on that one. But with these guys, we put quite a bit of time and effort into this. That property was landlocked and for sale for a long time and sitting back there. When the Champion property, the old Champion home or wherever, changed hands, we worked with that group as well. So they're a willing participant with the town to turn that into a public street to get access back to this property, and that was the only thing that made this project viable for them. We're hoping that we have a long-term relationship with these guys. Part of our plan still as a community or to build ball fields for the community at some point, and that's where we would hope the tournament play would occur that would start to bring people to town that stop at a McDonald's or stop at the gas station or get a motel room for the night. So it was with the thought, from an economic development perspective, this is the beginning of a great relationship between the town and this activity and the number of children that they run to these programs every year. So.
Thank you.
And that road, we're still negotiating that and still talking about what to do to make those improvements. So when Tim said the town will never spend money on that road, I can't say that we won't. We may spend money on that road to get that up to speed.
Thank you. Okay. Since you're up there, though, how would you respond to the concerns from the neighbors? Do you have any particular response, Mr. Hart?
I would think the applicants, as willing as they've been to work with us for the last year, will be just as willing to work with the landowner next to them. Can't say that it'll be a perfect world when all's said and done, but with the cooperation that we've had with them, I'm sure the landowner will experience some of that same cooperation.
All right.
But like I say, the property's been for sale for a long time and landlocked like it was. It just wasn't going anywhere, and it was priced appropriately. And it made it a great startup project for these guys to bring them to the community, whereas more expensive dirt, that wouldn't have happened.
Am I right that the site plan process that Tim mentioned, that's a process where the town staff would be very involved in making sure that impacts to neighboring properties are reasonably mitigated before a project goes forward?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Noonan, one last shot, and then we may have some more questions up here for both Tim and the applicant.
It would have been nice if I could have known about that a year ago, Mr. Hart, because I may have decided to sell before this was being moved in. So it would have been nice if I'd have known what you were planning there, just to let you know. I did try to buy it, and the price they wanted was way too high for me to buy it adjacent to my property. I wanted it too, because I didn't want something like this next to my property, so I did try. To your comment, ma'am, it's nice for the kids, but you still have to make money. This is a commercial venture, so I like you here. I know you're saying to these people, oh, it's for the kids. It's still a commercial venture. I would like to have, and again, what I asked you for before, if you're going to do this as C2, I would like to have some control over the hours of operation that these folks can use this, because it's going to be a real impact on my property. more than the issues that I gave to Tim, because I didn't know about the hours of operation. Tim sent me that email, 2 days after, 3 days after I sent you the email. So I didn't know about the hours of operation. I would have included that in my notice. My summer times are going to be useless on my property. You get 200 people on that, that's more than you get for football games. I'm not going to be able to open my windows. I'm locked. And I know someone pointed out it's commercial. Yeah, I didn't make it commercial, and Bertha did. When I bought that, it was agricultural. So I'm kind of stuck to true. But I just asked for the board, when I sell, if they want to buy my property, then they can do whatever they want. But for the present time, and I may move because of this, which we're not happy about, but for the present time, I'd like the board, when you zone this, to please, I don't know whether that's the
That PUD thing
Yeah,
you talked about.
that we can control the hours, and I hate to do that to you, but I got to live at this house. It's all I got. I've lived there for 14 years. I put all my money into it, and I think this is going to detract from my property value. Who's going to want to buy a residential property with you guys back there? I like the idea, but it's going to be tough. Thank you, Bert.
Thank you, Mr. Noonan. Yes, would you like to respond to some of those items?
Something to say? Please. My name's Victor Pacino, and I've been part of the organization since the beginning, of just a few things. 3 of my children have gone through this program. Daughter just graduated from Berthoud High School. My son just finished his age group with Pro Swing, and I coach one of the baseball teams, the 12-year-olds, and I have a son in that. The organization has been great. It's a great structure for kids. It's a steady learning environment, and they are very respectful. I've been there. There is no, what's the word I'm looking for? It's straight up, and these kids are on a straight line. It's a no-nonsense organization. So for concerns with all the loud noise and all that stuff, it's Mr. Noonan wouldn't have that issue, but I get where he's coming from. But it's been something that Steve's been looking for a long time, and it's a great organization, and he has a passion for children. And not only the kids that are in the organization, but the future kids that will be there. And I think it's a great spot, and I look forward to being part of that organization even after my kids are gone. So, and my wife's been in the organization as well, and she's actually going to start back up with the 10-year-old girls. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Very helpful. Mr. Hart, one additional item?
If I'm correct, this is a not-for-profit organization too, right? That's what I thought. It's not a commercial retail operation, so.
Okay, thank you. All right, yes, ma'am. No.
Yeah. Might as well, right? Good evening. I'm Jennifer Johnson. I am. Oh, okay. I'll try to talk louder. I am a parent of the Pro Swing organization. I am not a coach. I'm strictly just a parent. My son is going to be an 11-year-old this year in the program. It'll be our third year in the program. We did some searching when he got to an age to start doing competitive baseball, and we found a diamond in the rough for sure. So I wanted to make sure I spoke. As Victor said, this is a very structured program, very disciplined, and these boys and girls, I don't know the girls' side as well because I'm on the baseball side, but they're great kids. They're out in the community. They're out doing community events, whether it's Fort Collins, Loveland. We've got kids from all over northern Colorado up and down the Front Range. Berthoud is certainly a middle spot for a lot of the youth to come to. Ourselves, we're residents of Milliken. We're ecstatic that in the hopes that this will happen. One thing that I wanted to point out is a lot of the positive aspects that I see for Berthoud. Certainly, we have had practice facility. Last year, we were in a rental facility in Loveland. For me, I'm not going to go back home. I I go to Loveland, I end up shopping there, I end up having dinner there, I end up doing, whatever it may be, groceries. I find that, basically the hour and a half, 2 hours of time, I spend spending money. So I see this as a very positive aspect. I can say when the boys come out of practice, they're starving. So what do again? We go out and we spend more money. So I see this as definitely, when I drive down the main street and see the subways and the easy, quick things for after practice, it's a benefit to Berthoud. Another thing I wanted to point out is just this program. In times of falling budgets, the amount of dedicated parents and children to the organization, because it is top notch. I mean, there's not another program like this around. So to have this in Berthoud, you guys should be ecstatic. Last thing I wanted to say is just, this organization is here to grow. It's here to develop our youth. For not only now, but generations to come. This is a program we're only in, I believe, our 5th year, if I'm correct. I believe we fit here in Berthoud, where you embrace Front Range Corridor. As I mentioned, we've got youth from all over the Front Range Corridor. It's where good things grow. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, questions for either the town staff or the applicant? Go ahead, Carol.
Tim, is there a reason why this couldn't have been zoned for parks and open space instead of commercial? It looks like there's 3 possible permitted land use categories that support the request. And so just given the comments that we've heard, it's a not-for-profit. I just want to understand better what the trade-off is there between those, because that might have a positive, or I don't know if it will have if it'll have a positive impact, but it might have a less negative impact on the neighbor.
Well, we don't have a parks zone district.
Help me understand. So in the C2 zone, so is there any other zoning designation that might, it's late, I'm tired, I can't remember.
We have a long list of land uses that relate to this, but they're more public uses. In effect, more what a municipality would put on the ground than either a profit or not-for-profit company.
So this is the only possible zoning.
So we looked at that pretty hard in terms of if it was if the town was doing it, I could zone it a very different category.
And then I just have one other question, and this is because it is an annexation request, and I understand that there are a certain number of things that are supposed to be in an assessment report. I mean, it sounds like a great project, but I feel like I don't have a clue about the review of existing and adjacent land uses and compatibility or conflict, and what the town has understood as the possible measures required to mitigate. And we've heard about some of this. This is a requirement for annexation, and I can't find that information in the staff report that we have.
Right. And we don't. I don't have much of an annexation assessment on this.
Isn't that required for an annexation? I mean, I'm just trying to make sure our process is right here. We did this for the last annexation that we saw tonight. Why aren't we doing it for this one too, just to make sure we have all the information that we need?
And I talk about the project a bit. I talk about it, and we have the applicant's information that they provided in terms of the uses on the property. But in terms of the adjacent property, it's not an annexation question to some extent. It is it's in the assessment, but the design of that and how we deal with that happens at a later event. It happens at site plan.
Well, I'm just saying that for us to judge this, we're supposed to have an annexation assessment report that helps us understand a couple of these things. And so I guess that was my question, especially about the mitigation part, and also about the road part. I mean, that doesn't seem like that's been adequately addressed either. But anyway, those are my two concerns.
And the road is in progress. I think the flood actually took intermill surveying off to a different place, so we'd have had that here tonight.
I have a question for you, Tim. So the access to this property will be either from 17 or First through 10E?
It would be, no, it would be 10E. There would be only an emergency access. I don't know, Ms. Sue, I might need you to point. The only would be emergency access only on First Street at the right side of this drawing.
Yeah, I'm in here.
No, just right up on the property.
Oh, you're talking about the emergency access. Right there.
That's emergency only. That's, so if the fire district really need to get in there, they can crash through.
So the main road that will go into this, I saw that earlier, it's not in this, okay.
It's not. It's that long.
Currently not public.
So Kenny is here,
Right.
and then
It's public until it gets to that property.
Yeah.
So Tenny can cover that traffic that'll come from the use of this facility?
Yeah, they'd have to come through Tenny. And so a site plan can't even be considered until that access is set up, until that access is formalized.
So I guess my question is, can Tenny handle that kind of traffic? That's my question. Right now, it's not used.
Right.
Suncrest used to have, so that building
Yeah.
used to support 200 employees.
Okay.
So this
Okay.
is
Good
a
question.
fraction of that, and that's not even there today.
Okay.
Houses in and out of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tim, would a condition like the following be appropriate in this process? And ask others to think about it too. That if we were inclined to grant these requests, a condition could be just to address comments tonight and I think concerns that we might have. The condition, the town staff will require negative impacts to adjacent residential property be reasonably mitigated during the site plan process.
Sure. I lost the first part of your
The town staff will
suggestion.
require
Sorry.
negative impacts to adjacent residential property be reasonably mitigated during the site plan process. I'm just throwing that out for reaction from you and other commissioners too.
I actually had a comment too.
Why don't we just make that as like a third motion? So
Yeah.
not tying it to annexation.
But I wanted to
Not
make a
tying it to
comment
zoning.
before we have a discussion before we.
Sure, go ahead. I wasn't there yet. I was
okay.
just getting out there.
Yeah.
I didn't.
I actually wanted to applaud Pro Swing for coming to the town. I'm actually familiar with them as an organization, and I know Victoria Pacino is an outstanding softball player for Berthoud High School because I covered Berthoud High School's softball team. And I applaud our town for working with Pro Swing, and I have the highest expectation that you'll work to the best of your ability to work with your neighbor to the east, because that's your MO. And I'm really excited because I understand how the baseball and softball clubs operate and how much Pro Swing brings as far as economic development to wherever they're at. And so I'm glad that you're here. I appreciate that you waded through the earlier conversations, and I welcome you to Berthoud.
I want to thank Mike for following through on this for years. I've sit here with this terrible mixed emotion. My background's a businessman, and I feel for you as a property owner. The only other side I could think to throw out as a thought is once that operation is up and going, your property might have a higher value as a commercial property and be able to convert it to commercial property very easily with the zoning next door to it. So it may be something that if you really are thinking about moving on down the road, I feel for you. I really do feel for you. But the other side of that coin, I live across the street from A&W, and I love it. I don't have a bit of problem with it. And to hear these comments about ProSwing, and I have a confidence level in the town's staff and Mike, and that they would make the proper decisions. And as much as I feel for you, I'm going to vote for an approval. But I got to tell you, it's not easy. I read your letter. I know it. I know it. I hear you. You're not being unreasonable at all, and I feel for you. I just feel like I need to tell you that you got one guy sitting up here that really feels for you, but I'm going to vote against you, okay? Because I think for the betterment of the town, long term, and my responsibility as a member of this committee is to do what I feel is best for the town. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill. Let me ask the applicant's representative, was that condition to the zoning something that was acceptable to you guys? I think the zoning.
As far as I can tell, it's something we were intending to do anyway, so we're fine with that condition. Hopefully that condition is on the zoning rather than the annexation,
Right.
but we were going to do that anyway. So
I understand, but it just gives the residential property owner something to point at and to go
Right.
talk with Mr. Hart and Mr. Caters about and say, remember when we talked about this at that meeting. So anyway, that was just a thought I had. Other questions for Mr. Caters or the applicant?
Well, I would move to recommend to the Board of Trustees the annexation of the ProSwing First Annexation, Series 1, 2, and 3.
Is there any further discussion of that?
I want to second it, Dick.
You can third it.
I'll third it.
Okay. Any further discussion? When you're ready, Sue, please pull the commission. Yeah, we made a few tonight. You want my agenda?
Yes, please. Chris Thorne?
Yes.
Pat Menta?
Yes.
Christine Salantano?
Yes.
Carol Brewer?
Yes.
William Gilmore?
Yes.
Jan Dowker?
Yes.
Dick Shepherd?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to make a motion, and that is, with respect to the zoning of the property, I move to recommend to the Board of Trustees the zoning of a portion of the ProSwing First Annexation, Serial 3 to C2 as general commercial, subject to the following condition. That condition is the town staff will require negative impacts to adjacent residential property be reasonably mitigated during the site plan process. Is there a second?
Second. Oops, sorry.
No.
Forgot. Third.
Fourth.
Is there any discussion of that motion?
Is that new guy on the block, okay? Is that really required, or is that normal policy?
As a recommendation.
It's a recommendation to the town board, and I gave you my reasons for it, which were
That's
just
fine.
just to have something to point to.
I did.
Yeah. Further discussion? Sue, would you pull the commission on that motion?
Chris Thorne?
Yes.
Pat Menta?
Yes.
Christine Salantano?
Yes.
Carol Brewer?
Yes.
William Gilmore?
Yes.
Jan Dowker?
Yes.
Dick Shepherd?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you very much for your patience tonight, both the applicant and Mr. Noonan. We really hope your project's a success in Berthoud. And wish you good luck as you develop it and with your discussions with the further discussions with the town board. So thank you very much.
And we won't ask for an autograph. No, I'm just kidding. The swing is huge. Chris, I think it was a really good thought to have that in there, though, on the mitigation. Yeah, that was well.
You're welcome, Mr. Noonan. Thanks for your time.
I agree.
Thank you.
Don't thank him.
Good ideas. You've got ideas for him.
Tim, any commission? All right, we're adjourned.